Hey detectives! Welcome back. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Isla Reynolds. Isla Reynolds was born on April 4, 2010 in Waterville, Maine, USA. With blonde hair, blue eyes, and a charming smile, she was an adorable child who loved music and dancing. Her parents, Trista Reynolds and Justin DiPietro, had a brief romantic relationship in the summer of 2009, which resulted in Trista becoming pregnant. However, the couple broke up and Justin was initially a bit apprehensive about becoming a father, even doubting whether he was really the biological father of the child. When Trista gave birth to Isla, the child bore a strong resemblance to Justin, but he initially refused to acknowledge Isla as his daughter. However, after a paternity test in July 2010, Justin finally accepted his role as her father. As a result, Child Protective Services ordered Justin to pay child support in December 2010. Although Trista and Justin did not have a formal custody agreement in court, they did have an agreement in which Trista, who resided in Portland, would have primary physical custody. It was not until mid-2011, after Isla's first birthday, that Justin began spending time with his daughter. Since he lived an hour and a half away and visits were scheduled to be during the day and very brief, they agreed that Justin could occasionally take Isla with him but never overnight. Trista gave birth to her first child, Isla. Soon after, she became pregnant with her new boyfriend Raymond's child. In 2011, Trista had her second child, a son named Raymond Jr., and Isla became a big sister. Trista cared for both children until October 13, 2011, when Child Protective Services intervened due to concerns. The details of the complaint that led to the meeting are unclear, but it is known that Trista had a substance abuse problem. That day, officials gave her an ultimatum: overcome her addiction or lose custody of her children. In order to avoid losing custody, Trista entered a 10-day rehabilitation program and left the children in the care of her mother and sister. Isla and Raymond Jr. were her world, and she was determined not to lose them. By October 2011, Justin had seen Isla about 5 to 10 times. However, just 4 days after Trista was taken into custody, on October 17, Justin and his family decided to take custody of Isla. Justin's mother, Phoebe DiPietro, contacted Child Protective Services and was approved to take Isla. The agency promptly notified Trista's relatives of the decision. However, Isla's aunt, Jessica, strongly disagreed with Child Protective Services' decision, accusing Justin of abusing Isla in the past and expressing concerns for the child's well-being. The officials argued that a father had more custody rights than an aunt. After being granted permission, Justin and his family went to pick up Isla, but they did not know the exact address. To resolve the issue, Child Protective officials provided the location through Officer Charles Weaver. Officer Charles accompanied Justin and his mother to Jessica's home, where Isla was staying with her aunt. While the grandmother waited in the car, Justin and Officer Charles approached the door. A dramatic scene ensued as Jessica pleaded with the police not to take Isla away, warning that she would not give up the child willingly. Despite the stress, police observed that Isla appeared to be very happy, constantly laughing, playing, and even trying to strike up a conversation. Trista's sister, Jessica, asked the police to observe how Isla's behavior changed when Justin arrived. When Justin approached, Isla immediately began crying and tried to get away from him. Despite her distress, the police handed Isla over to her father. Isla struggled and screamed, even trying to bite the police officer when she was placed in Justin's arms. Jessica explained to Officer Charles that Isla was extremely afraid of her father and that it was not in her best interest to take the child away from her family. Charles explained that if it were up to him, he would not let Isla go with Justin, but that it was not his decision and that he was there to enforce the directive from Child Services. In order to transfer custody, One option is to reach an agreement with the child's mother or seek the judge's approval through a court proceeding. However, in a recent custody exchange, neither of these steps were taken. Instead, the decision was made by the Child Protective Services supervisor. Unfortunately, the supervisor awarded custody to the child's father, Justin. Before the court grants sole custody to a parent, it typically conducts a thorough evaluation, including a background check and home visit. However, this did not occur in Isla's case. The primary consideration in custody decisions is the best interests of the child, but there are no records to support the decision made in Isla's case. Analysts say the only reason to remove a child from her maternal relatives is if the child is in imminent danger. If officials believed Isla was in danger, it is unclear why her younger brother, Raymond Jr., was not removed from the home. The father took her to his family home in Waterville. His 47-year-old mother, Phoebe, his 24-year-old sister, Alicia, and her young daughter, Gabriella, also lived there. Justin, the 25-year-old father, lived in a basement, a large, partially finished room, while the rest of the family lived upstairs. Trista called Justin every day during his rehabilitation to talk to Isla and make sure everything was okay. She did not notice anything unusual in these calls. On October 20, 2011, when Trista was on her 8th day of treatment, a meeting was held to discuss Isla's situation. Attendees included members of Child Protective Services, 2 doctors, Trista, her sister Jessica, an attorney, and Justin, who participated by phone. As a result of the discussion, an agreement was reached that Isla would be returned to Trista on October 22, 2011, after completing her addiction recovery program. It was also decided that Justin would take Isla to a treatment center on October 21 to visit her mother. Although things initially seemed to be going well for Trista, the situation soon took a turn for the worse, with no agreement being made and implemented. Trista desperately sought the help of Child Protective Services to enforce their original agreement, but her repeated calls were unsuccessful. So she proposed a temporary solution to Justin. He would continue to care for their daughter, and she would have regular visitation rights to Isla. However, on November 12, 2011, Justin took their daughter to the emergency room after she was injured. After conducting relevant tests, doctors determined that she had a broken arm. Justin told the doctor that the accident happened the night before, November 11th. It was raining, he said, and he slipped and fell on her while on the porch with Isla in his arms. He added that although the girl was crying, she did not appear to be injured, and it was not until the next morning that it became clear that she needed urgent medical attention. By the following Monday, the orthopedist said that surgery was not necessary and that the injury would heal on its own. A week later, on November 26th, at a third medical appointment to assess the child's progress, the specialist said everything was going according to plan. Trista was present at that medical appointment to closely monitor her daughter's recovery, never thinking that it would be the last time she would hold her. The mother's decision to seek custody of Isla marked a turning point. On December 15, 2011, she filed a petition with the court to begin the custody process due to ongoing disputes over visitation and communication with her daughter. Just 2 days later, on December 17, 2011, Justin contacted the police, reporting Isla missing from his mother's home, where he was staying with his girlfriend Courtney Roberts and his sister Alicia. According to Justin, Isla had been put to bed the night before, but when they woke up, the 20-month-old was no longer there. That morning, Trista had gone to visit her husband Raymond at a correctional facility in a coastal Maine town near the Canadian border. Raymond was serving time for arson. Trista was in the passenger seat, asleep, while her father-in-law, Robert Fourier, drove. Robert receives a call from Trista's father with alarming news: Trista's child, Isla, is missing. Robert is momentarily stunned by the news, then finds a safe place to stop the car and wake Trista. Still half asleep, Trista hears her father's voice on the phone and tries to grasp the terrible news of her child's disappearance. Panicked, she immediately instructs Robert to change direction and go meet the police who are looking for Isla. Trista's hour-and-a-half journey feels like a century as she anxiously tries to contact Justin, growing increasingly frightened when he does not answer her calls. Upon arriving at the police station, Trista and her father-in-law, Robert, give their statements. 30 minutes later, Trista's father joins them. Justin called 911 at 8:49 a.m. that morning to report her missing, saying that Isla was last seen the night before at 10 p.m. by Justin's sister, Alicia, who had gone to check on Isla before going to bed. However, by Saturday morning, Isla had disappeared from her crib, with Justin not specifying the exact time she had gone missing in the call. Justin's theory was that Isla had been abducted by a stranger. As news of her disappearance quickly spread, the police quickly launched an investigation. In a statement to the media, the police chief assured that they were working diligently to find Isla at all costs. To aid in the search, the police thoroughly searched the house for any potential clues that could lead them to Isla. On the second day of the search, Sunday, December 18th, trained search dogs were brought in to assist. The area around the house where Isla was last seen was thoroughly searched and a detailed search was conducted at Trista's home. Due to the search, Trista had to temporarily stay in a motel with her mother and youngest son. By December 19th, the third day after the disappearance, the FBI was brought in to assist in the search. By this time, approximately 75 people from various agencies were involved in the investigation. State police had seized 2 vehicles from Justin's home, a 1996 Ford Explorer owned by Justin and a silver 4-door sedan owned by Justin's girlfriend, Courtney, who had been present the night of the disappearance. The news quickly attracted local media attention, and in the days that followed, Trista appeared in several local media outlets, criticizing Justin and implying that he was responsible for the disappearance. As the news spread nationwide, Trista continued to express her concerns, saying that Justin, as the last person to see her daughter alive, was the only one who could answer her questions. Finally, Justin released a statement to the media on Wednesday, asserting that he knew nothing about Isla's disappearance and assuring the public that he and his family would cooperate fully with the investigation to ensure Isla's safe return. However, in his statement, Justin admitted that Isla was in his sole custody at the time of her disappearance. But he lied, saying this was achieved through an agreement with the mother. Furthermore, he added that Trista was incapable of caring for the child. As time went on, the search effort expanded. The FBI's Child Abduction Rapid Deployment Team, CARD, canvassed the neighborhood, knocking on every door. They contacted every household, returned to the area multiple times, and interviewed neighbors to gather vital information. With a team of 75 dedicated officers, the police demonstrated their unwavering commitment to solving the case. Within 10 days of Justin's initial report, police had spent approximately 5,000 hours searching and were actively pursuing 330 leads. A massive search effort for Isla involved approximately 50 civilian volunteers from a search and rescue association. In addition, a $30,000 reward was offered to anyone who could provide valuable information that could assist in finding Isla. Isla's devoted mother, Trista, played a key role in bringing the case to the forefront. She worked with the support group to organize numerous events, such as vigils and parades, to honor Isla's memory. Her persistence ensured that the case remained in the public eye, with news cameras continuing to cover the story. Trista, along with other spokespeople, provided reporters with updates to keep the story on the front page. Initially, police treating the case as a missing persons investigation rather than a homicide. However, began to change when police sealed off Justin's home and the surrounding area. Police also seized his car and made a major announcement, further altering the public's perception of the case at the direction of the head of the Criminal Prosecution Agency, who made a public announcement. the police officially ruled out the possibility that Isla had run away on her own. On the 13th day of the investigation, the sheriff transferred the case to the state police's Major Crimes Unit. In this announcement, a difficult reality was revealed. The case had been moved from a missing persons investigation to a criminal investigation. In the early days, Justin kept a low profile and avoided the media, but over time, he began to appear more frequently. In one of his interviews on the Today Show, he addressed the change in the law enforcement message, asserting that Isla had been kidnapped and begging the person who kidnapped her to bring her home. He stated that he went on the show to approach whoever kidnapped his daughter and tell them that their actions were wrong. He stressed that they had no right to make such a decision because they were not her father and stressed that Isla needed to stay home with her family. When asked about his previous silence, Justin admitted that he had refrained from speaking out because he initially thought Isla would return. He said that the police had advised him to stay away from the media, a part confirmed by a Department of Public Safety spokesperson. The spokesperson clarified that this advice was only given initially and that the police had later encouraged Isla's parents to make more public appearances. Justin addressed the allegations against him directly. He invited the TV host to spend a day with him to see firsthand what he was going through. He expressed his appreciation for the police's efforts. Justin stressed that the truth remains the same, no matter how many times someone may be accused or called a liar. He believes that the truth is patient and will eventually come out. In late January, police announced that Isla's blood had been found in several locations in Justin's home. They also indicated that, although there was not enough evidence to make an arrest, Justin, Courtney, and Alicia, the three adults who lived in the home where Isla was last seen, were considered suspects. Stephen McCausland, a spokesman for the Department of Public Safety, stated that the family's account of the events was not supported by any forensic evidence, dismissing the possibility that someone had broken into Isla's bedroom undetected and taken her while the three adults were in the home. 6 months after Isla was reported missing, on May 30, 2012, police stated that there was no possibility that she was still alive. Trista's family allowed reporters into their home for a press conference announcing the news. Upon hearing the news, Trista immediately burst into tears, which quickly turned to anger as she accused Justin of killing her daughter. For Trista's family, learning the details of the forensic tests conducted at Justin's home was extremely difficult. They knew that Isla's blood had been found and that the amount of blood represented 25% of her total blood volume. However, they never saw the evidence until January 2013, when everything that had been discovered was revealed to them. Justin's 1996 Ford Explorer had a child seat in the back, where Isla's blood was found on the left shoulder strap. Dried vomit was also found in the back seat. In the girl's bedroom, police discovered blood on her princess pink sneakers, which were on the floor next to her crib, as well as on the face and arms of her doll. They believe she may have tried to clean the blood from her mouth with her toy. A blood stain was also found on the living room sofa. Most of the blood was found in a basement, where a pool of Isla's blood was found in the middle of the mattress Justin shared with Courtney. In addition, vomit and a pink strand that looked like the hair of a toy were found on the bed. Justin's sneakers, which had Isla's blood on the tongue and inside, were found next to the bed. There were also blood stains on the cement floor around the bed and on the walls, which corresponded to Isla's height. An expert determined that some of the blood drops were the size of a dime, indicating blunt force trauma. Furthermore, experts pointed out that some of the blood spatter in the house could have been caused by Isla's coughing, suggesting that she had suffered both internal and external injuries. Police said that they had used bed sheets to clean up Isla's blood. This was a horrifying revelation for Trista and her family, and they still had many more disturbing details to learn. Luminol tests conducted in the house revealed traces of blood that were not visible to the naked eye. The photo slides from the house left Trista deeply distressed. She panicked and left the police station, now more convinced than ever that her daughter, Isla, had been murdered. The police wanted to show her more photos, but she refused, saying she had seen enough. Months earlier, when the police presented the same photographic evidence, he showed no reaction. The police also tried to show Justin's family the photos. They refused. They were not interested. Justin's girlfriend, Courtney, who was with him the night Isla disappeared, reacted in a similar way. Overwhelmed and helpless, Trista told the press that Justin, Alicia, and Courtney were still walking down the street as if nothing had happened. 8 months after receiving a critical report in September 2013, Trista decided to write a letter to the press about the evidence and photos she had seen. She was frustrated by the slow progress and wanted to rekindle public interest in the case. In the spring of 2016, a group of journalists went to Justin's mother's house. His younger sister, Alicia, answered the door and was asked about the journalist who asked about the blood evidence. She mentioned that Isla was lactose intolerant and had been throwing up. However, a quick online search revealed that common symptoms of lactose intolerance include gas, bloating, abdominal pain, and diarrhea. While nausea and vomiting can occur, they are not the most typical symptoms, let alone vomiting blood. In 2017, at Trista's request, a judge officially declared Isla dead, determining that her death occurred on or about December 17, 2011, when her father, Justin, reported her missing. With this declaration, Trista and her attorney filed a wrongful death lawsuit against Justin, claiming he caused Isla's death through intentional unlawful acts and caused her pain and suffering before her death, including fear, terror, and physical injury. At the time of the lawsuit, Isla was still missing, and Justin, along with his attorney, denied any wrongdoing, describing the lawsuit as baseless. In response, Trista held a press conference where she addressed Justin directly, questioning whether he had a conscience. She said, "I could see it in your eyes, and you knew it was a problem. You looked at me, and I knew you cared." In early 2023, a judge granted Trista's request to add his mother, Phoebe, and his sister, Alicia, to the wrongful death lawsuit. The 3 defendants are now facing civil charges of wrongful death, intentional infliction of pain and suffering, and unlawful interference with the body of a deceased person. Additionally, Justin faces charges of failing to fulfill his parental duty of care to a minor child. Trista and her attorney understand that they will not receive any financial compensation from Justin. That is not the purpose of the lawsuit. Their purpose is to learn the truth behind Isla's disappearance. There are many strange things about Isla's disappearance. The police informed Trista of a shocking detail. On the morning Isla went missing, Justin drove to Portland and back before calling 911. He claimed that he thought Trista had kidnapped Isla and was looking for Trista, but he never contacted her or any of her family members. Instead, during that long drive, he called a friend who had sold him a $25,000 life insurance policy on Isla just weeks earlier. Adding to the strangeness, Justin stayed at this friend's house while the police were investigating the case. This was surprising, especially since he had been absent from his daughter's life for 9 months of Trista's pregnancy and for most of Isla's life. Trista also shared that she had received strange text messages from Justin in the week after Isla went missing. He expressed fears that someone might try to kidnap Isla. The last time he mentioned someone trying to kidnap her was on December 11th, just 6 days before Isla was reported missing. After her disappearance, his messages became threatening and cryptic, leaving Trista wondering what he really meant. Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Sierra Juffin. Sierra Juffin is a young girl who gets along with everyone. She has a cheerful, humorous, and energetic personality that brings joy to those around her. Even when she makes mistakes, she knows how to make her mother smile. As she grows up and enters high school, Sierra has maintained her adventurous spirit. She is not afraid to try new experiences, such as playing volleyball, and she is comfortable and confident both on and off the court. On July 19, 2016, Juffin's family returned home from vacation and started unpacking. Sierra was excited about her upcoming fall semester at university, especially her plans to study abroad. Her mother wanted to talk to her about it. Sierra is very active and recently bought a bike, but she hasn't had the chance to ride it yet. Whenever she finds some free time, she's eager to go biking. That day, Sierra left the house dressed casually in shorts and a tank top, with her hair in a ponytail. She told her mother she was going to visit her boyfriend Josh, who lives 712 miles away, and her mother approved of her plan. At approximately 1:05 p.m., Josh called Sierra's house. He was concerned because he couldn't reach her. Her phone went straight to voicemail. When Josh asked Sierra's mother if she was home, she replied that Sierra wasn't home. Josh then informed Sierra's mother that Sierra had left his house shortly before 7 p.m. and that he hadn't seen or heard from her since. Sierra's mother immediately sensed that something was wrong because Sierra wasn't answering her phone as she usually did. She quickly contacted Sierra's parents and grandparents, who lived nearby, but they had no idea where Sierra was. Extremely worried about their daughter's safety, Sierra's and Josh's families began an urgent search. Sierra's mother immediately got in the car and was determined to search everywhere possible. She carefully checked every corner and both sides of the road, but still could not find any trace of Sierra. Meanwhile, Sierra's aunt, along with her husband and son, also joined the search. They were worried that Sierra might have had an accident. Despite their best efforts, they still could not find any sign of her. When Sierra's mother returned home, she urgently contacted Sierra's friends via social media, hoping that someone had seen or heard news about her. However, there was no response. After many hours, there was still no sign of Sierra. Very worried, Sierra's mother decided to call the police. Just an hour later, a neighbor called to report that County Road 6 was blocked. Sierra's family rushed out of their home to see what was happening. They found a chaotic scene, with police officers refusing to let them through and providing no information. This left Sierra's mother in a panic, wondering if the police had found her missing daughter. Desperate for information, local police decided to seek the assistance of the FBI. EY promised to provide any updates to Sierra's family as soon as possible. Sierra's family couldn't sleep and lay awake, thinking about what they should do the next day. Sierra's mother and aunt refused to wait for answers and took matters into their own hands. Her mother began calling hospitals, hoping to find any sign of Sierra. After several calls with no results, they felt increasingly hopeless. However, a glimmer of hope appeared when they received a tip from Detroit, Michigan, about a young girl who bore a striking resemblance to Sierra. That woman was taken to the hospital without any identification after trying to escape from a moving car. She was severely injured, with multiple broken bones. In order to identify her, a nurse asked Sierra's family to check her body. Sierra's mother confirmed that Sierra had a scar on her calf and a pierced navel. The woman in the hospital appeared to match Sierra's description. Sierra's family hoped that the girl in the hospital was Sierra. However, they quickly discovered that it was not her, which was devastating for them, as they had pinned so much hope on finding Sierra. The next morning, police came to Sierra's home to provide an update on the events of the previous night. They reported that one of their officers had discovered a destroyed cornfield nearby. When he arrived at the area, he noticed signs of a struggle. He also saw traces of a motorcycle and decided not to disturb any evidence. During the incident, he caught a glimpse of Sierra's purple bicycle. Police later found several items at the scene, including both men's and women's sunglasses, a pair of bloody socks, and a screwdriver. Based on these findings, the police believe Sierra was abducted at this location. During the investigation, detectives extensively interviewed Sierra's friends and family to gather information about her boyfriend, Josh. Through their inquiries, they discovered that Sierra and Josh had been best friends since they were 7 years old. Their friendship eventually blossomed into a romantic relationship during their freshman year of high school, where they were known to be a lively and fun-loving couple. One of their shared passions was skiing, which they often enjoyed together. After graduating from high school, Sierra chose to attend the University of Toledo, while Josh enrolled at Bowling Green. Despite the distance, their commitment to their relationship remained strong, and they frequently discussed the prospect of marriage. However, Sierra wanted to prioritize her studies before settling down. Their relationship remained serious, and they had weathered the challenges of a long-distance relationship. Detectives determined that Sierra arrived at Josh's home at approximately 1 p.m. on July 19. According to the information they gathered, at around 6:30 p.m. that day, Sierra decided to leave Josh's home and wanted to ride her bike home. Concerned for her safety, Josh offered to accompany her on his motorcycle. However, on the way home, Sierra insisted that Josh turn around and let her walk home by herself, wanting to demonstrate her independence. Josh reluctantly agreed, and they parted ways, with him returning on his motorcycle and Sierra continuing her ride home. During the investigation, detectives found motorcycle tracks in the corn near Sierra's bike. This raised the question of whether these tracks could belong to Josh's bike. Detectives could not ignore this potential connection and began gathering more evidence to determine if there was any link to Josh at the scene. They quickly organized a search team to look for any clues about Sierra's missing. On July 14th, a resident reported that, while driving down the road, they picked up a motorcycle helmet lying on the side of the road. When they heard about Sierra's situation, they decided to take a closer look at the helmet and found red stains on it, possibly blood. The helmet was found in the area near where Sierra's bike was located in the cornfield. To find the owner of the helmet, the police approached Josh regarding his motorcycle helmet. Josh provided the helmet, proving that he had been wearing it when he went out. Additionally, the police confirmed that Josh had returned home after interrogating his parents. This evidence eliminated Josh from the list of suspects involved in Sierra's missing. Investigators were determined to identify the owner of the blood-stained motorcycle helmet found on the side of the road. They recognized the importance of DNA evidence, so they decided to send it to the crime lab for analysis. News of Sierra's missing quickly spread through the community. Residents formed search parties to thoroughly explore the area for any clues that could help locate her. The community also organized a candlelight vigil for Sierra at the local high school. Hundreds attended, holding flickering candles, as they came together in a display of grief, hope to her safe return. 2 days into the investigation into Sierra's missing, police received information about a truck seen speeding through the area. There was speculation that Sierra might have been kidnapped and sexually trafficked in the truck. The informant provided the police with the license plate number. Based on this clue, they interviewed the truck's owner. It was discovered that the speeding truck was not related to Sierra's abduction. The man explained that another car had suddenly pulled up from behind, possibly a family member searching for Sierra, which startled him. Consequently, he instinctively accelerated. After 48 hours of investigation, there were no leads on Sierra's whereabouts. Her family found it increasingly difficult to remain hopeful as each day passed and the chances of finding her alive diminished. Although they tried to remain optimistic, the grim reality of the situation became increasingly hard to ignore. The police conducted a door-to-door search for Sierra. Eventually, the investigation led them to a farm not far from where her bicycle was found. The property was about an acre in size and included several structures, such as a small house, a trailer, and a large barn. The owner of the property, James Worley, was met by the police at the farm and was questioned about the day Sierra went missing, hoping to gather relevant information. James surprisingly revealed that he had gone out on a motorbike that day, but the bike had broken down, causing him to lose some items, such as a screwdriver and a helmet. This revelation shocked the detectives, as those items were the same ones found at the scene of Sierra's abduction. James's unwitting involvement in the crime scene became a red flag for the detectives. Sierra's missing and her connection to James were becoming increasingly suspicious. While questioning James Worley, the detectives noticed scratches on his face, indicating that he had been involved in a fight. This further intensified the police's suspicions regarding James and raised numerous questions, such as whether the scratches were the result of a confrontation with Sierra. Detectives returned to the police station after questioning James Worley about Sierra's missing. They wanted to check his file, hoping to find relevant information. As they dug into James's past, they discovered that he had a dark criminal record, which included an attempted kidnapping of a young girl 26 years earlier, on July 4, 1989. On July 4, 1989, 26-year-old Robin Garter planned to attend a neighborhood picnic. Her mother was preparing potato salad and other food for the event. Robin thought it would be a good idea to go for a bike ride before the picnic. However, she had not brought any water with her, and it was getting very hot and uncomfortable. At that point, Robin considered going home to quench her thirst. Just as she was about to leave, she heard the sound of a car approaching. Robin figured she would wait for the car to pass and then go home. But before she could react, the car struck her bicycle. After the collision, Robin was hauled into the ditch by the side of the road. Dazed and confused, she still heard the driver stop and run out to check on her. The driver was none other than James, approached Robin anxiously, trying to assess the situation. The situation quickly became very dangerous. James suddenly struck Robin from behind, hitting her head very hard. Then, he pressed a screwdriver to her neck, threatening her life with menacing words. He ordered Robin to get into his car immediately. With the screwdriver pressed to her neck, James forced Robin into the car. After pushing her inside, he attempted to handcuff her. However, Robin resisted strongly, not allowing him to secure the second handcuff. Despite her screams for help, there was no one in the deserted field to hear her cries. Robin's persistent struggle against him caused her to nearly faint several times, but she persevered. In the unusual silence, she suddenly heard a faint sound in the distance. WH. And she looked closely, she noticed a motorbike approaching James's vehicle. Realizing that this might be her only chance to escape, Robin began waving her arms repeatedly to attract the motorcyclist's attention. Fortunately, the motorcyclist recognized her urgency and quickly stopped. In her desperate plea for help, Robin told the motorcyclist that James intended to kidnap her. Without hesitation, she climbed onto the back of the motorbike, escaping her captor and the vehicle. The man on the motorbike took Robin home, where she eventually fainted. Robin's mother called the police and an ambulance. The motorcyclist, wanting to assist the authorities, led the police back to the scene. They were surprised to find James Worley still there with his car. When questioned, James was cooperative and provided identification to confirm his identity. However, his version of the story differed significantly from what was initially believed. He completely denied any intention to kidnap Robin. According to James, Robin had been riding her bike erratically, swerving into the road, which left him unable to avoid a collision. He claimed that after the accident, Robin was in a state of panic, which was why he had handcuffed her, not with the intention of causing harm, but to tie her to the steering wheel of his truck while he sought help. He insisted that his actions were motivated solely by genuine concern for her well-being. James Worley was arrested in 1989 after attempting to kidnap Robin. He was convicted of kidnapping and subsequently incarcerated in the state prison in Mansfield, Ohio. James was sentenced to 6 to 10 years in prison but was released 3 years later for good behavior. When Robin learned that the man who had tried to kidnap her was released, she was terrified. The fear that James might strike again haunted her. Armed with information about James Worley's criminal past, the police decided to visit his residence. With a search warrant in hand, the officers went to the home of James, who was suspected of being involved in Sierra's missing. They found nothing unusual in the house. However, when they examined James's backyard, they discovered a small shed tucked away in the corner. Upon opening the shed, they found several bales of hay inside. The officers conducted a thorough search of the barn and the surrounding area, looking for evidence that could link James to Sierra's missing. All areas were searched meticulously, with the aim of uncovering any hidden items or clues. During the search, the detectives found a small green box hidden in a corner of James Worley's barn. They carefully approached and opened the box, revealing its contents. Inside, they found several carefully labeled and sealed bags containing underwear, socks, and tube tops in Ziploc plastic bags. As they examined the other items, they came across a pair of purple panties stained with a blood-like substance. The detectives were concerned about other disturbing discoveries that might await them in their search of James's compound. The detectives noticed a piece of plywood on the ground. Recognizing its potential importance, they carefully removed the board to reveal a small chest freezer buried in the barn. When they opened the freezer, they detected a strong chemical odor similar to bleach, which heightened their suspicions. As they continued to investigate, they found other disturbing elements partially hidden among the straw bales. Among the items discovered was a dirty mattress pad. The presence of zip ties, duct tape, handcuffs, and keys intensified their concerns, as these items are often associated with kidnappings and other nefarious activities. Detectives collected all the evidence for DNA testing. James attempted to defend himself by claiming that the items were part of a pornographic entertainment business he was planning. However, the evidence gathered was far too overwhelming to support his explanation. The combination of evidence collected from T. He crime scene, along with the incriminating items, led to James' arrest for Sierra's murder. Sierra's family was shocked to learn that her abductor lived far from her home. This revelation left them with many questions, the most pressing of which was undoubtedly, where was she? Detectives conducted a thorough investigation of James' property, leaving no stone unturned. They meticulously searched every inch of the property to ensure a comprehensive examination. To aid in the search dogs were brought in to detect any potential human remains. During the investigation, detectives discovered a pond. Recognizing its potential significance, they carefully drained the pond to search for evidence that might have been concealed beneath the water. Detectives examined the insulation at the front of the attic. As the investigation continued, they expanded their search to neighboring properties, realizing that evidence might be scattered outside James's property. They patiently pursued leads in all directions. At that time, a farmer walking in his field noticed a strange area of corn that appeared to be covered. He decided to investigate further. As he approached the area, he saw a mound of dirt and immediately thought it could be a grave. The farmer's concerns were heightened by the recent events surrounding the search for Sierra. He wasted no time in calling the police, sharing his suspicions and the exact location. When the farmer called for help, the police arrived on the scene. They noticed a newly turned area of dirt, which led them to suspect it could be a grave. After carefully assessing the situation, the police began investigating the area, taking care not to disturb any potential evidence. The police conducted a thorough search of the scene, hoping to find clues about Sierra's whereabouts. However, despite their best efforts, their search was fruitless. Detectives expanded their search, using drones and helicopters to survey nearby farms in hopes of increasing air chances of finding Sierra. During their investigation, the detectives discovered an area of land covered with fresh corn. Their dogs detected the smell of decomposition, suggesting that this could be a crime scene. When investigators dug into the area, they discovered the remains of a person. Based on the evidence, it was believed that this was Sierra's body. Unfortunately, her hands and feet were bound, and there was a foreign object lodged in her mouth, making it difficult for her to breathe. The evidence suggested that she had died of asphyxiation. That night, Sierra's family received the devastating news they had feared. The police had found Sierra's lifeless body. The news was heartbreaking, and the family wept. It was a tragic moment, and they were overwhelmed with grief. A month after Sierra's abduction and murder, James Worley was indicted on 19 related charges, including kidnapping and aggravated murder. 2 years later, James went to trial on these charges. Despite overwhelming evidence against him, James pleaded not guilty to all counts. The jury deliberated for 6 hours before returning their verdict in James Worley's case. After careful consideration of the evidence presented, James was convicted on all counts related to Sierra's murder. The severity of the crime resulted in the imposition of the death penalty for James Worley. In conclusion, the harrowing case of Sierra Juffin has come to a tragic end, revealing the dark depths of human cruelty and the devastating impact it can have on a family and community. The relentless pursuit of justice led to the discovery of Sierra's remains and the conviction of James Worley, whose past offenses and heinous actions were instrumental in bringing him to justice. As Sierra's family continues to mourn their loss, they can find some measure of solace in knowing that James Worley has been held accountable. This case serves as a stark reminder of the importance of vigilance, compassion, and the enduring fight for our justice in the face of profound tragedy. Hello again, true crime fans. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Amy Widener. Amy Widener, born in 1973, is the second of 4 children. Her siblings include an older brother, John Paul, and 2 younger sisters, Tiny and Cassie, who are 1 and 4 years younger than Amy. After their parents divorced, Gloria, the children's mother, took on the responsibility of raising the children herself. As their father played no role in raising them, the family lived in a house in Indianapolis, with Amy helping her mother with various household chores, including cooking, cleaning, and caring for her younger sisters. Amy, a bright and cheerful 14-year-old girl, had big dreams of becoming a teacher. However, her life took an unexpected turn when she became pregnant. Afraid to tell her mother, she hid her pregnancy by wearing baggy clothes for over 5 months. As her belly grew, it became harder to hide it, and eventually, her family discovered her secret when she was nearly 6 months pregnant. Gathering all her courage, Amy told her mother, Gloria, and burst into tears. Amy begged her mother not to hate her, but Gloria, though shocked, offered words of comfort and encouragement. Gloria recalls feeling stunned, thinking that this was the worst thing that could happen in her life. However, she had no idea of the even more heartbreaking events that were about to happen. The father of Amy's child was 20-year-old Tony Abercrombie, a friend of her brother. What their family did not know was that Amy and Tony had a secret relationship, with only the 2 of them knowing about their intimacy. After learning of her daughter's pregnancy, Gloria took control and forbade Amy from seeing Tony. On October 25, 1987, Amy gave birth to a daughter named Emily. Amy started school again just 6 days after giving birth. Her mother, Gloria, strongly supported Amy's return to school by taking care of Emily, allowing Amy to focus on her studies. Gloria also made sure that Amy had time to socialize with friends and live a normal teenage life. As a new mother, Amy remained dedicated to her studies, impressing her teachers with her perseverance. Despite juggling the demands of motherhood, Amy excelled in her studies, continuing to receive praise from her teachers. Amy's family adapted to the new addition, with everyone sharing the care of Emily. Over time, life began to fall into a positive pattern, with Amy overcoming her difficulties. Just when things seemed to be going smoothly, a sudden change turned everything upside down. On November 13, 1989, 16-year-old Amy woke up with a severe sore throat and decided to stay home from school, despite her mother, Gloria, offering to take Emily to a nanny. She kept her 2-year-old daughter, Emily, with her. After breakfast together, Gloria went to work, and Amy's siblings went to school, leaving Amy and Emily alone at home. Gloria tried to contact Amy by phone at 9:30 a.m. but received no response. When she called again a few hours later and still had not heard anything, Gloria became worried. She asked a nearby neighbor to stop by and check on them. The neighbor found the house quiet and unresponsive, prompting Gloria to leave work immediately and go home. When she arrived, she found Emily sitting on the stairs. Gloria called Amy, but received no answer, so she went upstairs. The scene in Amy's bedroom was tragic and shocking. Amy lay motionless and naked on the bed, surrounded by bloodstains. When Gloria realized the urgency of the situation, she quickly called 911. The police arrived and carefully searched Amy's house. At first, they thought someone had tried to break in because several items were missing, including stereo equipment and a graphic equalizer that belonged to Amy's brother, John Paul. Another item missing was a piggy bank from Amy's room, a simple glass jar with about $50 in savings for school. The police did not find any signs of forced entry. It is likely that the perpetrator entered through an unlocked back door or the front door, which Amy may have opened herself. In Amy's room, the police found key evidence, a bloody handprint on the wall and several strands of hair, likely belonging to the attacker. The medical examiner determined that Amy had been hit in the head with a sharp object, sexually assaulted, and then strangled. Amy's 2-year-old daughter, Emily, may have witnessed these events. Fortunately, Emily was found unharmed. Due to Emily's young age, the police attempted to communicate with her and gather any information she had. To create a more comfortable environment, they used finger puppets to gently question Emily about the events. During the interaction, Emily mentioned that her mother seemed very angry that day. Unfortunately, Emily did not provide any further details. To aid in their investigation, the police collected evidence, including a section of the wall with the attacker's bloody handprint, as well as the victim's clothing and bedding at the crime scene. During the investigation of Amy's case, the police spoke to her family, friends, and neighbors to gather information. One of the people they interviewed was Amy's 17-year-old brother, John Paul. Police initially suspected him, but he had an alibi and no evidence linking him to the case. Another person of interest was Tony Abercrombie, Amy's ex-boyfriend and the father of her child. He denied any involvement in her murder and expressed his deep feelings for Amy. Tony had a credible alibi at the time of the murder. Police also investigated Troy Jackson, who lived next door to Amy. Although he claimed he had nothing to do with the murder, he knew that a stereo system had been stolen on the day of the murder. Troy had no bruises or scratches on his hands, and a hair sample did not match the hair found at the crime scene. Troy also passed a lie detector test, which eventually cleared him as a suspect. Police expanded their investigation by talking to other acquaintances, neighbors, and classmates of Amy. They collected fingerprints and hair samples from these people, but no evidence pointed to any of them. A large crowd attended Amy Widener's funeral, and police attended the funeral, observing the proceedings and looking for potential clues in the case. Months passed after Amy's death, and the police still had no leads on any suspects. Gloria Widener, Amy's mother, adopted her niece Emily. As the family grieved their loss, Gloria feared for their safety, as the killer had not been caught. Fearing for her children's safety, she considered moving to a new home, but financial constraints made this impossible, forcing them to face their fears in their current home. Amy's friends were now haunted by the fear that they might be the attacker's next target. To feel safer, many of them asked their parents to take precautions and improve the security of their homes. Some even went so far as to board up their windows to protect against potential attacks. One day, when Gloria returned home after a normal day, she expected to find her daughters home from school. However, she was met with an eerie silence when she entered the house. The house was eerily empty, but her daughters' shoes were in their usual place near the door. Horrifying thoughts filled Gloria's mind as she climbed the stairs, fearing another disaster. She stood frozen in her bedroom doorway. Gloria took a deep breath and pushed the door open, finding her children simply asleep, and she breathed a sigh of relief. Occasionally, the police would visit Amy's family, inadvertently forcing them to relive the pain of that terrible day. The constant reminders of the past eventually became unbearable for Gloria. All she wanted was for the police to leave her family alone and stop stirring up memories that would never bring Amy back. In 1989, Amy was murdered and the case went cold. 13 years later, a shocking development occurred when a 29-year-old man contacted the Indianapolis Police Department claiming that he had had a dream in which Amy provided information about her death. Although he provided details about the murder, most of the information was released in news reports. Police investigated the man, who was 16 at the time of the incident and lived across the street from Amy's house. His fingerprints and DNA were tested for any potential connection, but no match was found, leading to his release. Although his call did not contribute significant evidence, it prompted police to re-examine the unsolved case. In 2002, the investigation resumed, focusing on some of Amy's friends and acquaintances. Despite renewed efforts, the investigation once again hit a dead end, leaving the case unsolved. 8 years later, a Facebook group called Remembering Amy was created by her friends, sparking renewed interest in solving the case. A police officer, unfamiliar with Facebook, asked his colleague, Officer Bill Carter, to help him print out information from a Facebook group related to a cold case. Although Bill specializes in crimes other than homicide, reviewing the details of the case piqued his interest in Amy's murder. In his spare time, he began to explore the case files. Bill scrutinized the 2-decade-old case, re-examining every detail in the file, re-evaluating the evidence, and reviewing Amy's school records from the day of the murder. He also looked at the list of people who had attended Amy's funeral. By entering the case information into the database, Bill found some overlooked leads. Among them were several friends of Amy's brother who had never been questioned by the police and had not provided DNA samples. In 2011, Officer Bill expanded his investigation by contacting Amy's family and friends, asking for potential leads and the names of people who might have information about the case. As part of his new approach, he also began collecting DNA samples from people who had not previously been considered during the initial investigation. This effort complemented the neighborhood survey conducted after the crime, where police recorded the names of residents who lived near Amy's home. Bill reviewed the case file and returned to the area to determine if any of the original residents still lived nearby. His investigation led him to a woman who was a neighbor and friend of Amy's. The woman tried to recall the names of the boys Amy had befriended, and while she mentioned some names that the police knew, she also mentioned an unfamiliar name, Rodney Dank. In 2012, Bill received permission from the Cold Case Unit to officially take over the Amy case. His first step was to locate Rodney Dank to determine if he was a potential suspect. Amy's family was familiar with Rodney, as he was friends with Amy's brother, John Paul. They spent time together doing activities like biking and fishing. Bill asked John Paul about Rodney and learned that Rodney was a quiet, reserved person who kept to himself and did not arouse any suspicion. To gather more information, Bill went to the home of Rodney Dank, 40, who lived with his mother near Amy's family. Rodney worked at an auto parts store and had been divorced for some time, with an adult son whom he rarely saw. When Bill arrived at Rodney's home, his mother answered and told the police that Rodney was at work. Bill left his business card, asking Rodney to call him as soon as he returned. Rodney called Bill that evening and the police asked to meet with him to discuss Amy's murder. Rodney agreed and allowed Bill to come to his home. However, when Bill returned to Rodney's home, he was not there. Bill decided to run a background check on Rodney and discovered that Rodney had been convicted of assault in 1991 and burglary in 1997. The police also compared Rodney's fingerprints, which were already in the system, to the fingerprints found at Amy's house during the initial investigation. The test was conducted to determine if Rodney was involved in the case. When the results came back, they discovered that Rodney's fingerprints matched the bloody fingerprints found at the crime scene. After 23 years, Rodney was identified as the killer, but he had disappeared from the house. The police launched an extensive search. They tracked Rodney's credit card activity, which showed a rental car with an OnStar tracking system. The police located the car in Indianapolis, where Rodney was hiding at a friend's house. When surrounded by police, Rodney brandished a knife and claimed his innocence, injuring himself. He attempted to attack the police but was subdued with a taser, handcuffed, and taken to hospital. During a 2-day hospital interrogation that was captured on camera, Rodney confessed to Amy's murder. He said his original intention was to rob, not anticipating Amy's presence due to her illness. Rodney described entering the house through a sliding glass door, where he was suddenly confronted by a panicked Amy. In his panic, he grabbed the nearest object and hit Amy in the head, killing her. As he recounted the events of the next 2 days, Rodney repeatedly mentioned that his memory of the incident was hazy, blaming the 23 years that had passed since the crime. Rodney's account of his actions was inconsistent and he initially mentioned visiting Amy's house with someone called Bag. However, he could not recall many details about this person, including their appearance. When asked about Emily, Rodney stated that he did not see her during the incident and did not know that she was in the house or that she had called for help. Throughout the interrogation, Rodney remained calm. Rodney's DNA was collected and matched with semen found on Amy's bedsheets and blankets in 1989. Fingerprints and semen found at the crime scene were both confirmed to be Rodney's, with no indication that anyone else was involved. When Rodney was revealed as the killer, Amy's family was shocked. They were baffled how Rodney, who was quiet and unassuming, could have committed such a crime. Rodney was friends with Amy's brother John Paul and often visited their home, which was across the street from his. Even more remarkable was that Rodney attended Amy's funeral, where he mourned her death and offered his condolences to her mother, Gloria. Police Bill later found Rodney's signature in Amy's funeral book, a detail that had previously been overlooked. Reinvestigating the case led Bill to a crucial discovery. Rodney's name was first mentioned by Tony, Amy's ex-boyfriend and Emily's biological father, in 2003. Tony revealed that Rodney had frequently visited Amy's family home. Bill realized that Rodney had somehow escaped notice in 1989 and had never been suspected or questioned at the time. Further investigation into Rodney's background in 2012 uncovered a disturbing fact. His biological son, Dylan, was in prison for a crime committed in 2009. Dylan was 16 when he killed his biological mother, Mary McHenry. He claimed that he had acted in response to her abuse, using a baseball bat to inflict the fatal wounds. Mary died of her injuries. Dylan turned 17 just days after the incident, leaving behind a tragic and heartbreaking case. Despite being largely absent from Dylan's life due to his early divorce from Mary McHenry, Rodney attended Dylan's trial in 2009, opting for a plea deal that resulted in a 20-year prison sentence. By the time of his scheduled release in 2029, Dylan will be 37. Rodney, on the other hand, initially insisted that he had an accomplice in Amy's murder, a man he knew as Bag. However, in June 2013, just 10 days before his trial was due to begin, Rodney, then 42, recanted his earlier confession, admitting that he had acted alone in Amy's murder. Rodney's sudden confession, combined with the substantial evidence against him, led to his 65-year prison sentence in 2013. Amy's family held a meeting with Detective Bill Carter after Amy's case was solved. To mark the 24th anniversary of her death, they released 24 balloons into the air, expressing their gratitude for Detective Bill's crucial role in solving the case. The family thanked him for his efforts, especially for identifying Rodney as the killer after just 12 days of investigation. Police officer Bill Carter received a prestigious award from the Indianapolis Police Department in January 2014. Although he was offered a position in the Homicide Bureau, he chose to stay in his current position. Years later, Amy's daughter, Emily, has grown up. She graduated from her mother's alma mater and then went to college, looking for new opportunities. Eventually, Emily moved from Indianapolis to California. Gloria still lives in the house where her daughter, Amy, tragically died. She has kept Amy's room as a memory of her, with photos still on display. Now, the room is also where Gloria's grandchildren play when they visit for the holidays, bringing joy and new life to a space once filled with sadness and loss. Hi everyone, thanks for returning. Let's unravel another perplexing mystery. The case of Catherine Pileggi. Ronald Vinci was born on August 16, 1940, in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. From a young age, he showed a natural talent for entrepreneurship. In his 20s, he started his first business by renting a space on the Pacific coast to sell Honda motorcycles. Over time, his small shop grew into one of the largest Honda dealership centers in the state. As his business success continued to grow, so did his wealth. Ronald expanded his business by opening more car dealerships, which significantly increased his earnings. Those who worked for him often described him as a strong-willed and determined individual. In his personal life, Ronald Vinci was married to a woman named Pamela, with whom he had a son named Carey. However, their marriage eventually ended in divorce. After his divorce, Ronald began living a more extravagant lifestyle, spending his wealth on luxury items such as expensive toys, airplanes, and helicopters. His passion for collecting aircraft led him to acquire a large hangar to house his extensive collection. Ronald simplified his daily commute to work by securing government approval to build a helicopter pad on his property, despite some of his neighbors opposing the idea. Having the helicopter pad allowed him to commute to work directly from home by helicopter. He also had helicopter pads installed on the roofs of his car dealerships, making it easier for him to travel by air. Ronald, then 50 years old, met 34 years old Catherine in 1990. At the time, Catherine worked as a flight attendant. She originally from a family in a rural area of Georgia. Growing up, she participated in local beauty pageants where her bright smile and charisma easily captivated people. Her striking beauty and cheerful personality earned her many admirers. After completing her education, Catherine worked as a lab technician at a veterans hospital for several years. However, she felt unfulfilled and longed for more in life. Seeking a change, Catherine left her job in 1980 to join Delta Airlines as a flight attendant, earning an annual income of $20,000. She enjoyed her new role, taking care of passengers and serving meals, and even acquired useful tips like using coffee grounds to eliminate unpleasant odors on airplane seats. 10 years into her career as a flight attendant, Catherine's life took a dramatic turn. In 1990, she met Ronald Vinci, a millionaire, on a flight. Despite their 14-year age difference, they fell in love, drawn to each other's charming personalities. Catherine eventually left her job and moved into Ronald's luxurious California home. Together, they shared a passion for travel and explored various destinations, with Aspen, Colorado, being a favorite getaway spot. Ronald and Catherine were in a decade-long relationship, but Ronald never proposed to Catherine. Eventually, they decided to part ways. Catherine moved to Florida, seeking a fresh start and a new partner. In April 2001, at age 45, Catherine began a relationship with 63-year-old Dilio Carano, a financially stable insurance agent, after being introduced by mutual friends. She shared with Dilio her previous unhappy relationship with Ronald, explained that it was a difficult time, filled with arguments, excessive drinking, and infidelity. Ronald had never proposed, despite her decade-long hope for marriage. Dilio promptly proposed to Catherine, and they got married in May 2001, just a month after meeting. After their wedding, the couple settled in Miami Beach, Florida, and Catherine seemed content with the marriage. Dilio describes Catherine's initial demeanor as being like a house cat, gentle, calm, and eating very little. In addition, Catherine is very afraid of water. She cannot bathe in the ocean, sea, or river. A few months into their marriage, Dilio noticed a dramatic change in Catherine's behavior. She began asking him for large sums of money, insisting that he buy her clothes and gifts. She would often compare him to her friends' more generous husbands. According to Dilio, Catherine was taking about $55,000 per month from him. She claimed the money was for education expenses, but never provided any receipts. After a few months of this financial strain, Dilio realized he had made a mistake by rushing into the marriage. He decided he wanted a divorce. The separation process was relatively easy, as they had no children or shared assets. Court documents revealed that Dilio's net worth was $4.5 million, while Catherine had only $8,000 in her accounts. As Catherine prepared to move out of Dilio's house, she was overwhelmed with sadness and despair. In 2005, Ronald Vinci, a wealthy millionaire, made a big change by moving to Fort Lauderdale, Florida, where friends had convinced him he would enjoy a favorable climate and low taxes. Prior to the move, Ronald had sold his car dealerships and amassed a substantial fortune. He purchased a luxurious fourth-floor apartment in Fort Lauderdale and soon reconnected with Catherine, a flight attendant he had previously dated. Catherine moved in with Ronald, and they rekindled their romance. Coincidentally, Catherine's ex-husband, Dilio Carano, lived in the same building but 30 floors. Dilio was perplexed by Catherine's decision to reconnect with Ronald, whom she had previously described as a monster. Neither Ronald nor Catherine go to work. They enjoyed a life of leisure, but their differences became increasingly apparent. Ronald struggled with his weight due to his love of rich foods, while Catherine maintained a strict diet and a very low weight of 42 kilograms. Ronald and Catherine had distinct personalities. Ronald loved attending lively parties, whereas Catherine preferred quieter evenings at home, often lost in crime novels. She favored casual clothing like shorts and sneakers. Despite their contrasting tastes, they commonly traveled together, exploring the Caribbean islands by air and sailing across the ocean. However, she struggled with aquaphobia, and her diary entries revealed her intense fear of the ocean. Ronald consistently encouraged Catherine to overcome her fear, and she made an effort to join him on these adventures despite her anxieties. This suggests Ronald had a strong influence over her. When not traveling, Ronald and Catherine would often host gatherings at their home. During these events, Ronald enjoyed great food and drinks, frequently ordering $1 tacos and strong beverages when out with friends at budget-friendly bars along the Fort Lauderdale waterfront. On occasion, he would embarrass Catherine by implying she was entirely dependent on him. Despite this, Catherine remained calm and composed. However, Catherine maintained her composure. She would quietly cater to Ronald's needs, especially when he had been drinking, by serving drinks and snacks and attending to his friends. Ronald's relationship with Catherine persisted for 5 years, despite his increasing hesitation to propose marriage. By 2010, he began sharing his feelings with friends, revealing his desire to end the relationship and find a younger partner. In early 2011, Ronald was hospitalized due to severe intestinal issues, which his doctors attributed to his years of excessive alcohol consumption. Prior to the hospitalization, Ronald had noticed an unusual change in the taste of his food, which sparked concern for his health. A friend joked that Catherine might have tried to poison him, but Ronald dismissed the idea without considering it seriously. Ronald's health issues mainly stemmed from his poor self-care. His frequent consumption of alcohol and pills, which he used to unwind and sleep, had severe negative effects on his body. Ronald Vinci purchased a $3 million waterfront home in Fort Lauderdale in June 2011, where he planned to spend his retirement. The 70-year-old millionaire looked forward to visits from his son, Kerry, and his grandson. Kerry worked as a waiter, a job that Ronald often teased his about, Ronald jokingly suggesting he was holding out for his inheritance. Tragedy struck on the afternoon of June 28, 2011. When Ronald's gardener called 911, reporting an incident at the mansion. Upon arrival, police found Ronald's lifeless body in a guest bedroom, wrapped in plastic bags and tightly sealed with tape inside a sleeping bag. Additionally, the sleeping bag contained soiled sheets and was covered with what appeared to be wet dirt, later confirmed to be coffee grounds. A further investigation revealed a slashed mattress. The gardener told the police that Catherine had said Ronald fell down the stairs, hit his head, and died. However, the officers were not convinced it was an accident. During questioning, the gardener provided a disturbing account of the incident before finding Ronald Vinci's body. When the gardener arrived at the Ronald residence in the morning, after receiving an urgent call from Catherine late at night, he was met with an horrific scene. Ronald's lifeless body was wrapped tightly in a sleeping bag in a guest bedroom. Catherine, visibly upset, begged the gardener to help her bury Ronald, revealing that Ronald wanted to be laid to rest in the ocean after his death. To fulfill this wish, Catherine had bought a blue container for Ronald's body, intending to take it out to sea on Ronald's yacht. Catherine had already stored the container in her garage before authorities were notified by the gardener. The medical examiner's thorough examination revealed horrific findings. 70-year-old Ronald had suffered from 9 stab wounds to his chest and neck, had injuries consistent with being hit by a hammer, and was ultimately killed by a gunshot wound to the head. Earlier, on the evening of June 27, friends gathered at Ronald's house. Catherine prepared a meal for the guests, while Ronald served drinks. The evening seemed normal at first, but it quickly turned into a tragic one. On the evening in question, Ronald reported that his passport and one of his pistols were missing during dinner. He also complained about the food, saying it was unusually bitter. Feeling unwell, Ronald unexpectedly went to bed at 7:30 p.m. A departure from his usual late-night routine. His friends found this early bedtime suspicious and eventually left his house. Later that night, Catherine was brought in for questioning. In her confession, she described a confrontation with Ronald, which occurred around 1 a.m. on June 28. According to she, a drunk Ronald woke up and began verbally insulting her. The situation escalated, resulting in Ronald chasing her down the stairs. However, he lost his balance, stumbled, and fell, hitting his head severely. Catherine claimed that she helped Ronald up and led him to a guest bedroom on the first floor. After cleaning the blood stains on the stairs, she checked on him a few hours later and found him asleep with a loaded gun. Catherine stated that she feared for her life, believing Ronald might kill her. In a state of fear and desperation, she grabbed the gun and shot Ronald in the head. During the interrogation, Catherine explained her actions, saying she was consumed by fear and anger, feeling as though her soul had left her body. After the shooting, Catherine further injured Ronald by stabbing him with a knife and hitting him with a hammer. She then wrapped his body in a bag in an attempt to hide the evidence. Realizing she needed help, Catherine contacted someone known as the gardener for assistance with disposing of the body. Before hiding the body, Catherine purchased a large container from a hardware store, intending to use it to dispose of Ronald's body in the ocean. This was confirmed by surveillance camera photos. Subsequent investigations uncovered a gun in Catherine's car, with her fingerprints on it, matching the gun used to shoot Ronald. Her car also contained a knife, pieces of a cut-up mattress, clothing, rubber gloves, all stained with Ronald's blood. Catherine was arrested and charged with first-degree murder. Just a month before the crime, she had been involved in a dispute with her sister. Catherine's sister claimed that she had borrowed money and refused to pay it back. But she maintained that the money was a gift and therefore did not owe her sister anything. Ronald's neighbors reported hearing screams coming from his house on the night of the murder. Additionally, a witness spotted a white vehicle with a large trailer near Ronald's house early in the morning. The car belonged to the gardener. According to Ronald's friends, he had been trying to end his relationship with Catherine for some time. The couple had been experiencing marital problems, including a lack of intimacy, and had been sleeping in separate rooms for months. In an attempt to finalize the separation, Ronald had tried to give she $1 million, just weeks before the tragedy, asking her to leave their house permanently. Prosecutors suspect Catherine's main motive was fear of losing her wealthy partner, Ronald. In contrast, Catherine's defense team argued that she was a victim of severe abuse and had acted in self-defense. Several questions arose during the trial, including why Catherine didn't immediately contact the police, why she initially lied about the incident, and why she endured years of abuse without leaving Ronald. Catherine's relatives testified in her defense, and a court psychiatrist identified signs of domestic abuse. However, none of Ronald's close friends or associates witnessed or reported any mistreatment in their relationship. Instead, they described she as calm and content, never complaining about her life. During the trial, Catherine made a surprising accusation against Ronald, claiming that he was responsible for the sudden and mysterious death of her younger sister, Angela, in December 2009. Catherine, Ronald, and Angela went on a Caribbean cruise together. Angela struggled with substance abuse and, during a party on the ship, she drank excessively, leading to severe illness and intense convulsions. In an attempt to save her sister, Catherine performed CPR, but unfortunately, Angela's heart stopped and she passed away. It was later discovered that Ronald had given Angela some pills on the evening of the cruise, which allegedly were intended to help her relax. Catherine strongly believed that these pills played a role in her sister's death. However, in an unexpected turn of events, Catherine was found guilty of Ronald's murder in 2014. The jury delivered a verdict that resulted in Catherine being sentenced to 25 years in prison. She is currently serving her sentence at the LEL Correctional Institution in Marin County, Florida, and is set to be released in January 2034 at the age of 77. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Zhu Ling. The story begins at a prestigious event at Tsinghua University, often referred to as the Harvard of China. The university has teamed up with the Beijing Symphony Orchestra to stage a performance. The audience is dressed in formal attire, with the men in dark suits and the women in beautiful evening gowns, all chatting politely as they take their seats in the grand theater. Zhu Ling, a student from Tsinghua University, is set to take the stage that evening. For Zhu, her assignment is to play a 6-minute solo on the guqin, a traditional Chinese instrument. This performance will be a defining moment for her future career. The audience, which includes professors, bosses, and benefactors, is vital to her career prospects, and she needs to engage them and leave a lasting impression with her performance. The guqin is a derided instrument favored by intellectuals. In Chinese culture, guqin players are often considered refined and gentle. A Song Dynasty guqin sold for $22 million, making it one of the most valuable musical instruments. In the days leading up to the event, stress-induced stomach aches and blurred vision took their toll on her health. Zhu's friends gathered near the stage, their anxiety evident as they watched her prepare to perform. For 2 months, Zhu had devoted herself to this moment. When Zhu stepped onto the stage, bowed to the audience, and began to play the guqin, her friends held their breath. But as the music filled the theater, their tension disappeared. Zhu's stage presence was captivating, her hands moving gently, creating beautiful sounds that echoed in the hearts of the audience. Some of her friends were deeply moved, tears rolling down their faces. The 6-minute performance ended and the audience applauded enthusiastically. Zhu bowed to the audience, smiled, and walked off the stage. Her best friend was in the crowd, proudly applauding enthusiastically. Because the hard work of practicing had left her completely exhausted, that night, Zhu Ling decided to skip the celebration and go home to rest. When she went to take a shower, standing under the cool water of the shower, washing her hair, she caught a glimpse of a strand of hair floating on her hand. Panicked, she ran her hand through her hair and touched her scalp. She quickly pulled back the shower curtain and ran to the mirror to check. Zhu's reflection in the mirror showed a face of exhaustion, with uneven bald patches that looked like they had been shaved off carelessly. But that was just the beginning. Over the next few weeks, her condition rapidly deteriorated, leaving her confined to a wheelchair, unable to move, speak, or even control her facial expressions. She went from a promising student at Tsinghua University to someone with the intellectual capacity of a 6-year-old. This was not the result of an illness or genetic disorder. Tsinghua University is one of the most prestigious schools in China, making it extremely competitive for local students to gain admission. With an acceptance rate of just 0.4% for local students, the university has a massive annual budget of $5 billion and is known for educating the children of influential politicians and wealthy businessmen, who are often highly educated. Getting into college is just the first hurdle. The real challenge lies in coping with the fierce competition and rivalry that pervades college life. Many alumni have come forward to admit that they have resorted to deceit and deception, such as betraying friends and deceiving others, to stay ahead. This cutthroat environment is a direct result of the university culture, which strongly fosters a competitive spirit. Zhu Ling, a 1994 chemistry major at Tsinghua University, is one of the top 3 students in her class of 31. Her class consists of 20 men and 11 women. She is an outstanding student and is considered by many to be special. Zhu is not only smart but also has an outstanding appearance. Everyone expects great things from her and predicts a bright future. Zhu has a charisma and confidence that makes her friends jealous when she first arrives at the dormitory. Her warm and friendly demeanor quickly won her friends and fans. She attended classes diligently, and many were amazed by her seemingly endless energy. However, after a few months, people began to notice a strange and inexplicable decline in Zhu's health. She began arriving to class later than her classmates and always appeared exhausted during lectures. She sweated as if she was overheated. Zhu had a hard time concentrating on the lesson content. One day, she even had a severe stomachache. Zhu asked for painkillers from the school's infirmary, but the pain was only slightly relieved. Her teacher thought it was a stomachache caused by stress. Zhou's health began to deteriorate. She began to come to class a little late, and gradually she was absent from classes altogether. Her friends were very worried and decided to visit her at the dormitory, where she lived with 3 other girls. When they arrived, they found Zhou lying on the bed, shaking and moaning in pain. Her black hair was falling out in patches. Her friends were worried and urged her to see a doctor, but Zhou said she was just stressed and would return to class the next day, assuring them that she would be back to normal by the end of the semester. The once healthy Zhou was now almost unrecognizable. Her skin had turned pale, and her lips had turned purple. She moved slowly and painfully, as if every step caused her excruciating pain. Most of her hair had fallen out, leaving her nearly bald, forcing her to constantly wear something to cover her head. Zhou also suffered from recurring vision problems, resulting in temporary blindness that lasted for hours at a time, adding to her distress. Rumors of Zhu Ling's deteriorating condition quickly spread throughout the school. Many students speculated about the cause of her symptoms, suggesting that she might have cancer, hair loss, or an immune system disorder. However, a more worrying theory emerged among the students, who believed that Zhu's decline was related to stress caused by a disagreement with her close friend Sunny. The conflict began when Zhu missed an important orchestra rehearsal for a difficult piece. Sunny told her instructor that Zhu did not attend because she thought she was too good and believed that others needed to catch up to her level before she could participate. The revelation of Sunny's malicious comments was extremely difficult for Zhu to accept. Beige, a friend from Peking University, and Zhu's high school friends decided to visit her in the hospital, bringing a basket of fruit. However, upon entering the hospital room, Beige was shocked. His first reaction was to run away, not because he was afraid of being infected, but because he was shocked to see his classmate in such a bad condition. He couldn't understand how a 20-year-old girl full of vitality could change so quickly. What kind of disease could take away everything Zhu had worked so hard to build? The medical team was confused by Zhu's condition. Just a few months ago, she was still very healthy, but now she was critically ill, attached to many machines and nasal tubes, barely wearing clothes and almost bald. Her body convulsed, her face was partially paralyzed, and her eyes were wide open, desperately begging for help. Just the slightest touch caused her excruciating pain. Even the thin fabric of the hospital gown was unbearable for her. Seeing the silent cry for help in Zhu's eyes, Beige decided to seek answers, along with Zhu's parents, to try to understand her condition and find a solution. Zhu initially suffered from mild abdominal pain for a month or 2 before her condition worsened. These pains would come and go unexpectedly, like contractions. The pain became more intense over the next week, forcing her to bend over in pain and often curl up on the ground. As the pain worsened, Zhu's parents said she tried to control the pain by drinking a lot of Chinese herbal tea. However, the tea had no effect and the pain became more and more intense, eventually causing her to pass out. At first, Zhu did not seek medical attention, hoping that her symptoms would subside on their own due to her busy school schedule. But her condition worsened as her vision began to deteriorate. Her vision blurred, then disappeared for hours. Things got worse for Zhu as her hair began to fall out. Her condition continued to deteriorate, forcing her parents to take her to the hospital, which happened just days before Christmas, marking her first hospital stay. That month, Zhu's parents continued to support her throughout her treatment. Tests showed that Zhu was free of arsenic and mercury poisoning. A doctor from another hospital who had treated a similar case in the 1960s suggested a possible case of thallium poisoning. This seemed plausible, but Zhu insisted she had not been exposed to thallium during her studies. To investigate further, the hospital contacted Tsinghua University to determine what chemicals Zhu, as a chemistry student, might have come across. However, Her medical records showed no exposure to potential triggers for her symptoms, leaving the medical team puzzled over her condition. Zhu's health seemed to have improved after a month, so she asked if she could continue studying. She wanted to take the exam and did not want to miss the entire semester. However, her parents disagreed, believing that stress had caused her illness, and worried that returning to university would worsen her health. Zhu pretended to have fully recovered and returned to class in February. Unfortunately, her condition rapidly deteriorated in March and she was hospitalized again. This time, her condition had deteriorated so much that she lost the ability to speak. Beige's frustration with the lack of answers from the local medical community led him to reach out to medical professionals around the world, not just in China, for help. He translated Zhu's symptoms into multiple languages and posted them on specialized online medical forums. Beige received his first response in less than 30 minutes, and over the next few days, he received nearly 2,000 emails from experts in 18 countries. Notably, many of these respondents were affiliated with prominent national health organizations and were experts in toxicology. Their answers, which were symptoms of thallium poisoning, causing her pain ranging from mild to severe. Thallium is a highly toxic metal that was once used in rat poison, but its use has been banned in many countries, including China and the United States, since the early 20th century. It was also used to treat lice infestations, although a known side effect was hair loss. The symptoms of thallium poisoning can be very varied, leading to delayed diagnosis and often misdiagnosis by medical professionals. One of the challenges in identifying thallium poisoning is that it does not cause visible external signs, such as bruises or wounds. The progression of thallium poisoning typically occurs in stages. Initial symptoms begin with stomach upset and severe pain, followed by tremors, headaches, insomnia, and temporary blindness. As the poisoning progresses, the victim may experience extreme skin sensitivity, similar to a severe burn, making even light touch unbearable. Daily activities, such as getting dressed or lying in bed, may become a source of pain. In the late stages of thallium poisoning, neurological symptoms appear, including uncontrolled muscle movements, seizures, and partial or complete paralysis. This can eventually lead to significant cognitive impairment. In severe cases, such as Zhu's, thallium poisoning can cause a significant decline in cognitive ability, turning a top-achieving student into someone with the mental capacity of a 6-year-old. Beige worked with Zhu's parents to analyze numerous emails and quickly shared their findings with the medical team treating Zhu. However, the doctors treating Zhu were skeptical of the online contributors' proposed diagnosis, saying that detecting thallium in Zhu's body would require specific tests that could not be performed on-site. They also pointed out that thallium testing would require sending Zhu's blood to a specialized lab, and thallium is a rare and highly regulated substance. Even if thallium poisoning were the correct diagnosis, the doctors believed that an antidote would likely not be effective at that stage. This information shocked Zhu's loved ones, raising an important question: who would want to harm Zhu? One theory emerged that the target could be her parents, given their important jobs. Her father was a senior engineer at a national agency, a position that could involve handling sensitive information, and her mother was an engineer at a major Chinese company. However, this line of investigation has hit a dead end. The main goal now is to find out how the poison entered Zhu's body. In particular, no one on campus has symptoms similar to Zhu's. This suggests that Zhu either ingested or came into direct contact with the substance. Meanwhile, while Zhu was in the hospital, her personal items were mysteriously stolen from her dormitory. The stolen items included shampoo, contact lens case, lipstick, body soap, and even her water cup. Furthermore, the perpetrator seemed to be interested only in Zhu's belongings, marking a strange and unprecedented incident in the dormitory of such a prestigious university. Since there were no surveillance cameras on campus at the time, an investigation was needed to find out the answer. Because students are housed in separate rooms by gender, only current female students at Tsinghua University are allowed to enter the female dormitory. Neither alumni, graduate students, nor professors are allowed to enter the dormitory housing more than 100 young female students. During the investigation, the police investigated more than 20 suppliers of thallium, a toxic substance used in the production of optical lenses, electronic devices, and other products. The police scrutinized the procurement records and discovered that one supplier had supplied thallium to the chemistry department of Tsinghua University for research purposes. The investigation found that only a small group of people at the university had access to the thallium, namely 2 professors, 3 graduate students, and 2 seniors. It is likely that the criminals were involved in these experiments, so they had the opportunity to obtain the thallium and had the opportunity to take personal belongings from Zhu's dorm room. As the investigation continued, the professors and graduate students were quickly eliminated as suspects because they were not allowed into the female dormitory. This left 2 senior students as prime suspects, 1 male and 1 female. However, since male students were not allowed into the female dormitory, everyone turned their attention to the female student. Surprisingly, this student was revealed to be Zhu's close friend Sunny, who is now the prime suspect in Zhu's case. Mutual friends of Sunny and Zhu mentioned that Zhu had recently won against Sunny in the student election. Sunny was known to not accept defeat easily. She was argumentative by nature and had cheated on Zhu several times. As Zhu achieved more success and recognition, Sunny became increasingly agitated. The final straw was Zhu's stellar performance at the Beijing Symphony Hall, which further strained their relationship. Zhu's exceptional beauty, talent, and admiration from both her peers and faculty may have fueled Sunny's jealousy, leading to the heartbreaking incident. Sunny was interrogated for 8 hours before her parents took her home. Her family is influential at Tsinghua University, with her father a key figure in the Democratic Revolutionary Committee and her grandfather a former vice president. Most of her relatives hold government or academic positions at top state universities. As a result, Zhu's case remains unsolved. Sunny maintains her innocence, claiming that the police have cleared her of all suspicion. However, she changed her name and date of birth, married an American, and moved to the United States. Zhu's condition, on the other hand, was worsened by the late diagnosis of thallium poisoning. By the time the diagnosis was confirmed, the thallium levels in her body were already alarmingly high, and treatment with the antidote Prussian blue was ineffective. The poisoning left Zhu permanently disabled, with irreversible nerve damage, resulting in the mental capacity of a 6-year-old child. Zhu's family received $14,000 in compensation from the hospital for mishandling her medical records, and the police quietly closed the investigation without informing them. Zhu Ling survived the incident for 50 years, but the perpetrators were never brought to justice. Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Sonda Diameter. In December 2018, a group of college students brought their 20-year-old friend Sonda Jia to the emergency room in critical condition. He was unresponsive, extremely pale, and had a body temperature of 27 degrees Celsius. This was unusual because Sonda was a healthy and active young man with no previous health problems. The medical team ran several tests, which revealed that Sonda had hypernatremia, a life-threatening condition caused by too much sodium in the body. Normally, an adult consumes about 2 grams of sodium per day, but Sonda's body contains 160 grams, equivalent to about 2 months' worth of sodium. The medical team asked Sonda's friends what had happened, but they simply shrugged, avoided eye contact and pretended not to know about Sonda's condition. It was clear that something was wrong. Despite the efforts of medical professionals to save him, Sonda, 20, died of multiple organ failure. The autopsy revealed the initial findings. The pathologist examined Sonda's stomach to understand the cause of the seemingly healthy college student's sudden death. To the doctor's surprise and shock, he discovered that he had not eaten or drank any food or water for the past 2 days. Instead, his stomach contained foreign objects such as goldfish from an aquarium, the head of a rat, and the entire head of an eel. This indicated that Sonda had suffered horrific experiences before his death. The case attracted a lot of media attention, quickly becoming an international topic of discussion. Talks broke out about universities covering up shocking student misconduct and the lack of responsibility of the children of wealthy families. A student association called Reusgum was closely monitored. Reusgum, founded more than 70 years ago, is symbolized by a Flemish lion. The secret society has about 30 active male members, mostly law, engineering, and business students from prestigious families. Reusgum is one of the most prestigious and sought-after groups at the prestigious Catholic University of Leuven in Belgium, with only 2 or 3 new members admitted each year. The secret society is surrounded by rumors, which makes it all the more mysterious and mysterious. It is like an elite group of students with a lot of power and influence on campus. The Reusgum Student Secret Society has begun planning its annual initiation ceremony for new members. The ceremony includes a unique and daring menu, starting with appetizers such as roasted grasshoppers and cockroaches, followed by a main course of rats and raw fish. Dessert is a mix of coffee and a banned substance. A disturbing photo of a Reusgum fraternity's initiation ceremony has gone viral. The photo shows the group's leaders dressed in worn clothes, while 4 new members are kneeling. 2 of the new members are pictured with a gun pointed at their heads, a pistol, and a rifle. The photo raises many questions. What other types of rituals does this secretive group conduct? What exactly are the events that take place inside the fraternity? Considering the backgrounds of many of its members, parents, politicians, lawyers, prominent doctors, and business leaders, what would they do to protect their children if something truly happened seriously? Sonda never had any aspirations of joining the Reusgum fraternity. Instead, he was a young man born in Belgium to a Senegalese father who sought asylum in the country a few years before he was born. As an immigrant, Sonda's father worked hard to ensure his 2 sons could live a good life. He knew that because of the color of his skin, his children would have to work twice as hard to gain the same respect and career opportunities as native Belgians. Sonda's father, Dia, worked long hours at a factory, spent many nights mastering the local language, and slept or stayed up all night to help his son study. His only desire was for his sons to succeed in life. From a young age, Sonda understood the importance of working towards his goals. He realized that success will not come easily and required perseverance and hard work. As he grew up, Sonda had a close friend named Ferry, who lived nearby. The 2 shared interests such as cycling, comics, and dreams of going to college, finding a good job, saving money, and eventually moving to Japan. They even promised to be lifelong friends and visit Japan together one day. However, fate had other plans for Sonda, and he will never have the chance to visit his dreamland. As a teenager, Sonda had many friends. He had an innate ability to excel in various activities, such as solving complex math problems and playing soccer, which surprised his friends. Despite his special talents, Sonda was loved by everyone for his easygoing and charming personality. He was sociable and easy to get along with, which made it easy for him to make friends. After completing high school, Sonda made his family proud by becoming the first person to attend a prestigious university, the University of Leuven. His father was extremely happy with this achievement, which exceeded his dreams. Although the university was close to home, Sonda chose to live in a dormitory. He pursued civil engineering and was determined to get a master's degree in the field. Sonda's maturity and ambition drove him to make his father proud. His ultimate goal was to graduate, secure a high-paying job, and allow his father to retire, repaying the sacrifices he had made for his children's future. By 2018, Sonda was in his third year of a 5-year program and was already thinking about his career after graduation. In order to achieve his goal of securing a high-paying job to support his family and pay the bills, he stayed away from parties and focused on finding a job. Realizing that his skin color could be a hindrance in a predominantly European industry, and with his high academic achievements, communication skills, and hard work, he realized that building relationships was important. This realization leads him to consider joining the Ryuzgum, a group that has important connections and is essential to his career. Joining the Ryuzgum seems to be a strategic decision. Many of its members come from prominent families, which makes Sonda's decision to apply a surprise to his friends, except for his brother, who understands the potential career advantages of the organization. However, his childhood friend Ferry has reservations about these groups and even tries to dissuade Sonda from joining, seeing it as a potentially dangerous move. If Ferry had known the tragic outcome that would befall Sonda, he would never have stopped trying to stop him. Sonda's decision to join Ryuzgum was not an impulsive one, he considered it carefully. With 2 years left until the end of his studies in 2018, he weighed the pros and cons before making his final decision. Sonda was then one of 10 students who successfully passed Ryuzgum's rigorous selection process. Of these 10, only 3, including Sonda, advanced to the final selection stage. In the first stage, Ryuzgum members screen out candidates who do not match their interests, personalities, or communication styles. Once the final 3 are narrowed down, the real challenge begins. We'll spend 2 months rigorously evaluating the 3 selected, culminating in a 2 to 3 day selection ceremony. During this intense evaluation process, the recruits are subjected to constant, relentless humiliation and complete dependence on the members of the Ryuzgum society. Sonda learns about the brutal initiation rituals of the society, but he is willing to go through with it for the promise of a better future. Like the other 2 candidates, Sonda understands that the process will be difficult and push them to their limits. However, no one anticipates risking their lives in such situations. Sonda's school friend, who belongs to another society, has his own views on the Ryuzgum initiation activities. He sees it as a challenging test of endurance, brotherhood, and self-control. Although he admits that it is difficult, he believes that it is a necessary experience and will ultimately be rewarding. However, Sonda has a very horrifying experience. He is forced to drink too much alcohol. What was even more disturbing was that he was forced to drink the urine of existing members of the society. Sonda and the other newcomers were constantly insulted. Sonda had the worst of it. He was ridiculed for the color of his skin, which made his experience even more unpleasant. In October 2018, the society held a large event at the Student Union building. New members, including Sonda, were forced to kneel and take turns drinking large amounts of strong alcohol. Despite this, the newcomers were still forced to clean up the place. They stumbled across the floor, trying to clean up their own and others' vomit. The experience was traumatic and humiliating for Sonda and the other new members. That night, the 3 new members were ordered to clean up, but the Ryuzgum brothers had other plans. They decide that only the dark-skinned man, Sonda, will be cleaned, citing historical precedent where dark-skinned men served white men. Sonda feels powerless to protest, but he is determined to overcome it. Knowing that this situation will eventually end, Sonda worked hard to be accepted into the society, but at the age of 20, he was still quite naive. Despite the pain he had gone through, Sonda continued to attend the society's meetings. Sonda loved his father, who had sacrificed a lot for his education, and Sonda was determined to make him proud. Sonda hoped that the humiliation would end once he passed the final hurdle. The Ryuzgum Society, which has a history of over 70 years, had only 2 members of African descent. In 2015, a dark-skinned student was inducted, and Sonda was about to become the second person to undergo the final initiation ceremony, also known as baptism. On December 4, 2018, the initiation process for new members began at 4 p.m. In the first challenge, 3 candidates, including Sonda, wear long, flowing white robes and walk into town with bouquets of flowers. Their goal is to sell as many flowers as possible by the end of the challenge. The person who sells the fewest flowers is punished. These punishments include drinking yogurt and other unpleasant substances. Sonda ends up in last place, selling 30 fewer roses than his competitors. This leads to his punishment, where he is forced to drink a significant amount of alcohol, affecting his ability to speak. The initiation moves into the second phase. The new members, now kneeling, are asked simple questions. However, by 7 p.m., the members of the association have become less tolerant of Sonda's inability to answer these questions clearly. Unsurprisingly, he is defeated by the other competitors and faces further punishments. His punishment was to drink a bottle and a half of gin. His body, not used to the large amount of alcohol, began to react painfully. His stomach was filled with the alcohol he had drunk. Sonda's health quickly deteriorated, leaving him unable to walk, talk, or move, as he faced severe dehydration and passed out repeatedly. Surprisingly, this incident took place in a public place, right on the sidewalk in front of a cafe in the city square. However, no passers-by intervened or called the police for help. At 9 p.m., the third challenge, called Endure the Night, began. The student council took the new recruits to their dormitory, where the 18 student council brothers continued to torture them relentlessly. This time, the participants were required to drink as much beer as possible. By the end of the ordeal, all 3 participants were unconscious, although they were still breathing. However, this did not stop the continued abuse. According to the order's custom, when someone faints, they are urinated on by the order's members. A video was recorded of these actions at 11:40 p.m., but the perpetrators attempted to delete the footage. When the first day of the event ended, the new members were taken to their quarters and violently thrown onto their beds. The water supply was cut off as a prank. The initiates' belongings were vandalized with ketchup and chocolate, and they were locked up. This meant that if any of them woke up, they would not have access to water to relieve their dehydration, having consumed a potentially fatal amount of alcohol. This was just the beginning of a week-long initiation ceremony at one of the country's most esteemed universities. But the most traumatic experiences were yet to come. The next day, December 5, 2018, at around 10:30 a.m., the members of the order were ready to begin the final stage of the initiation ceremony. They woke up the 3 new members, loaded them into a car, and drove out of the city to a remote village about an hour away. One of the members of the order had a small, isolated house surrounded by dense forests, ideal for keeping their activities secret. Along the way, they stopped several times to purchase the necessary items for the ceremony. They visited a pet store to buy items such as aquarium fish, eels, live rodents, as well as bird and dog food from a pet store. They then stopped at a supermarket to buy various products, including fish sauce. However, this sauce is high in sodium and is not usually consumed in large quantities. They also bought duck eggs, sardines, clams, shrimp paste, mussels, and other seafood products. During their stop, a professor approached the group of students and noticed that one of the students was in need of help. She expressed her concerns to the society members and even suggested calling the police. However, the society members, quickly convincing her that the student was simply drunk and in shock, stated that the initiation ceremony was over and that they would help him recover by giving him a cold shower. This seemed to allay the professor's concerns. The group then went to a cabin in the woods. The police have reconstructed the details of what happened next through the recovered deleted footage and some evidence. The truth about the events that took place in that forest is still unclear. For several hours, the three beginners had to dig a large hole, which they were then placed in. Other members of the student union surrounded the hole. They filled it with cold water and live eels. In Belgium, the average temperature in December is around +3 to +7 degrees Celsius. When the newcomers start shivering from the cold, the members of the society urinate on them from above, a strange act that is said to warm them. At this point, Sando was dehydrated and still drunk from the night before. Even if he wanted to get up and leave, he couldn't. Normally, if a new initiate wanted to stop, he would just ring a bell placed at the edge of the pit, but this time the bell had been removed, leaving Sanda with no way to indicate that he wanted to stop. His physical condition, unable to stand or speak, left him helpless. The three new members, exhausted and drunk, were forced to sit in ice water and endure the urination and defecation of the members of the order. They were then forced to bite the heads of rats and eels that lived in the water and drink fish oil. After 6 hours of enduring these brutal conditions, Sanda's body began to weaken and he passed out. Finally, he was taken out of the water, dressed in dry clothes, and placed next to the fire. As he curled up on the ground for 2 hours, the initiation ritual continued around him. As Sanda's health deteriorated, instead of seeking immediate medical help, the fraternity members spent their time taking pictures and recording Sanda's painful images and sounds. Sanda's body was now reacting violently to the excessive sodium intake, leading to high blood pressure and a nosebleed. Sanda then passed out. Time passed. It wasn't until 8:57 p.m. that one of the fraternity members decided to call an ambulance. The students then drove Sanda to the hospital, but instead of placing him safely in the back seat, they deliberately placed him in the trunk to avoid dirtying the car's interior. Upon arriving at the hospital, the association members deliberately withheld important information from the medical team regarding Sanda's diet and recent alcohol consumption. After dropping him off and handing him over to the medical team, the group of students left immediately, saying that the ceremony would resume as soon as Sanda was discharged from the hospital. A decision that did not take much care of Sanda's health. While medical professionals were investigating the cause of his condition, Sanda's internal organs began to fail. He was eventually transferred to Antwerp University Hospital for more advanced care and better facilities. There, he fell into a coma, and Sanda's heart stopped, and the 20-year-old tragically passed away. The cause of death was determined to be high levels of sodium in his body due to his excessive consumption of fish sauce during the ritual. This prompted the hospital to notify the police, who immediately opened an investigation into the circumstances surrounding Sanda's death. As news of Sanda's death spread, 2 other ritual participants were rushed to the hospital at 10:40 p.m. after their conditions worsened. Their parents also rushed to the hospital upon learning of their child's serious condition. Meanwhile, the members of the cult attempted to cover their tracks by destroying all evidence. They filled in a trench used in the ritual, cleaned up the room where they used ketchup and chocolate, turned on the water supply, and deleted incriminating messages, photos, and videos from their phones. However, when the police arrived, they were still able to recover the deleted data from the cult members' mobile devices. The investigation into Sanda's death has been difficult, despite the considerable amount of evidence that has been collected. The members involved belonged to powerful families whose parents quickly sought legal representation. Although the evidence linking the 18 members of the student body to Sanda's death grew stronger, the investigation dragged on and was repeatedly thwarted by powerful parents. All 18 students deleted their social media profiles and limited their communication, speaking only through their lawyers. Following Sanda's tragic death, the Reusgum student body was eventually dissolved, and the university disciplined the students involved, requiring them to complete 30 hours of community service. Despite the severity of the incident, none of the students were expelled. The group of 18 completed their studies without any significant consequences. A group of teachers protested the lenient punishment, writing an open letter in support of harsher punishments for the group, but no additional measures were taken against the students. The legal process of the case was completed in July 2020. However, the lawyers for the Reusgam members tried to reframe the case as a tragic accident caused by Sonda's poor health. It was not until May 26, 2023, that the court finally issued its verdict. The court found 18 Reusgam students guilty of manslaughter and mistreatment. Each member was fined €400, ordered to perform community service, and ordered to compensate the victim's family about €30,000. The court decided not to reveal the identities of the students responsible in order to protect their future. The relatively light sentences caused widespread outrage, leading to protests in several cities. However, while these protests took place, the outcome remained the same. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of McDermott family. Mark McDermott was born in the early 1960s in Australia. But we know that Mark was the eldest of 5 siblings. Known family members include his father, Bruce McDermott, and 2 sisters, Tracy and Nicole, with Nicole being the youngest. According to those close to him, Mark was not only a successful businessman but also a kind and easygoing person. Nicole described her brother as a wonderful person who avoided causing harm to others. Information about Mark's life is limited, especially regarding his adult life. However, we do know for sure that he traveled to the southern United States, although the reasons and circumstances are unclear. It was there that he met Johanna Dunn, a single mother raising a 4-year-old son, Donald Dunn. Donald Wayne Dunn was born in the early 1990s in West Virginia and lived there with his mother's family all his life. His grandparents played a major role in Donald's early upbringing, as they cared for him most of the time. Donald's mother, Johanna, was a single working mother who found raising a child difficult, so she asked her grandparents to help. On the rare occasions when Johanna and Donald were home together, she would often entertain him with video games or television. This reflected Johanna's difficulty in giving her son her full attention, although they tried to make time for each other. Their lives changed when Mark came along. Johanna and Mark quickly fell in love and married. Johanna took her husband's last name, and the 3 of them moved to West Virginia, becoming a happy family. From the beginning, Mark and Donald were very close, as if they were related by blood. Their relatives, including Mark's sister and father, confirmed that Mark treated Donald like his own son, and Donald also considered Mark his only father. The relationship between Donald and Mark was very close, which was evident when Donald was young. During the difficult times when Mark and Johanna were temporarily separated, Donald was still determined to stay with Mark instead of his mother. At the same time, the family faced a great challenge when Johanna was diagnosed with cancer. However, thanks to their support and solidarity, they overcame these difficulties together. Mark always took good care of his stepson, ensuring that Donald had a comfortable and fulfilling life. Although Donald is a simple man and does not ask for much, he is very grateful for the peaceful and luxurious life his stepfather has created for him. When Donald graduated from high school in 2008, Mark covered the entire cost of his college education. Donald attended Rio Salado College for the first 2 years, then transferred to Marshall University in 2010. Throughout this time, Mark continued to financially support Donald's education. Donald lives with his girlfriend and her family. He and his girlfriend have been in love since they were 15 years old. Despite this, Mark and Johanna have always been very supportive of Donald. They not only pay for Donald's tuition but also support him financially in many other ways. Specifically, they cover the costs of Donald's clothes, car insurance, daily living expenses, and food. Donald dedicates all his time and effort to studying. As a responsible and diligent student, he always strictly follows his daily study schedule. He often refuses or cancels plans to meet friends and relatives, citing the need to complete assignments or study for exams. Donald prioritizes studying above everything else in his life. During his 5 years in college, he always tried his best to graduate on time and not fall behind in any semester. May 25, 2013, a Saturday, was supposed to be the big day when he received his university diploma. However, instead of being the joyous occasion he had planned, the day turned into a heartbreaking moment that would change his life forever. While the McDermott family was preparing for Donald's graduation, an emergency call was placed from their home to 911. Johanna called the police and admitted that she had shot her husband. She insisted that the act was intentional, not an accident. Police quickly arrived at the McDermott family home. Sergeant Greg Kean of the Raleigh County Sheriff's Office was one of the first law enforcement officers to arrive. When he got to the scene, he noticed that Johanna appeared to be in a state of severe shock. As he entered the home, he found Mark lying motionless on the couch in the living room. He appeared to have been reading a book when he died. Initially, Sergeant Gregg noticed that he had 2 gunshot wounds to the head. However, when investigators moved the body, they discovered a 3rd wound behind the shoulder. The medical examiner at the scene confirmed that the cause of death was head injuries, but it was possible that Mark did not die immediately after being shot. There was a lot of blood at the crime scene, suggesting that Mark had been losing blood over time before his death. According to initial reports, Donald was taking a shower to prepare for his important day. The sound of the running water from the shower drowned out the gunshots. So Donald did not hear Johanna shoot her stepfather. It was only when Donald emerged from the shower that he discovered Mark's body in the living room. On the dining room table was a pistol and a letter, presumably written by Johanna to Donald's son. In the letter, Johanna expressed her grief and explained that her marriage had become unbearable. She could no longer live with a man she did not love anymore. Johanna also apologized for leaving Donald's life when he was still a minor. At that time, Johanna and Donald were taken to the Raleigh County Sheriff's Office in a private car, where a police officer took their statements. Since Johanna was the one who called the police, the incident was initially treated as a serious case of domestic violence. In the call to the dispatcher, Johanna stated that after an argument with Mark, she had shot him in the head with a pistol in a fit of rage without realizing what she was doing. However, she later changed her story, denying what she had said before. This caught the police by surprise and forced them to adjust the entire investigation. After getting into the police car, Johanna suddenly revealed the truth that it was not her, but her son Donald who killed Mark. However, this was just the tip of the iceberg. The story was actually much more complicated than what the investigators initially thought. Johanna entered the interrogation room and met with Captain James Barr from the Raleigh County Sheriff's Office. She detailed the events that had occurred on May 25, 2013. According to Johanna, her son was scheduled to attend his graduation that morning. Before that, she had gone out to run some errands and buy groceries. Johanna had just arrived home and was about to get out of the car when Donald approached her. He asked his mother to close her eyes and follow him into the house, saying that there was a surprise. Trusting her son, Johanna complied and walked into the dining room. Donald told his mother to sit down. Suddenly, Johanna heard a distinct clicking sound. When she opened her eyes to look at her son, she was horrified to see Donald pointing his own pistol at her. The gun failed to fire, and Johanna panicked, trying to wrestle it from her son. She tried to calm down, think clearly, and make a plan to save herself from becoming Donald's victim. Seeing Mark's body, she quickly told her son that she would call 911 and take the blame for him. Although Donald was initially skeptical, he eventually agreed to his mother's plan. During her interrogation, Johanna explained why she called 911 and incriminated herself. She did so to protect herself from Donald, even though she knew she would go to jail. She believed that if she did not, Donald would kill her. Johanna expressed shock that her son would point the gun at her head and pull the trigger, something she never thought would happen in her 23 years of being a mother. The gun belonged to her. She explained that the reason the gun did not fire was probably because Donald had pulled the trigger of the semi-automatic gun too far, preventing it from firing normally. Captain James thought Johanna's story was very plausible. From the moment he met Donald, he felt something was wrong. He noticed that Donald, a 23-year-old young man, was too calm for this serious situation. His face always remained neutral, showing no emotion. Therefore, he decided to put him in a separate interrogation room, away from his mother. From the beginning of the interrogation, Donald denied any involvement in his stepfather's death. However, after being informed of Johanna's testimony, his denial quickly collapsed. James did not need to use any threats or pressure to force Donald to confess. Instead, he voluntarily recounted the whole incident, revealing every detail of the case. The story Donald told was almost unbelievable. This story begins after Donald completed his first year of college. It was clear that his academic performance was not good, and due to his low grades, he decided to drop out of school. Donald shared that at first, his courses were easy and he could get good grades just by showing up to class on time. As the semester progressed, he encountered more and more difficulties in his studies. He felt that he was not capable of continuing. Instead of admitting the truth, he decided to lie to Mark and Johanna. Not only were his close friends deceived, but his girlfriend and her family were also unaware of his true situation. According to Rachel Rush, Donald's girlfriend's sister, he created a false impression that he was studying. Donald maintained a student-like schedule, leaving and returning home at fixed times. He spent most of the day in his room and asked not to be disturbed, citing the need to focus on homework or studying for exams. To create a more convincing appearance, Donald even falsified his transcripts. This was a deliberate deception that lasted for 4.5 years. No one in Donald's life realized that he was lying to them. Donald's family trusted him completely during the time he pretended to be a student. Johanna and Mark had no idea that their son had abused the financial and emotional support they had given him all this time. Donald admitted that he had no intention of deceiving his family at first, but as time went on, it became more and more difficult to confess the truth. The main reason he could not tell the truth was because he was afraid that Mark and Johanna would stop paying for all his expenses. Although he appeared to not care much about material things like cars or expensive clothes, he did not want to give up his current lifestyle. He was well aware that he would lose a lot if his parents found out the truth. For a long time, Donald had been meticulously planning to escape all trouble. From the beginning, he had planned to kill his parents to avoid suspicion. Donald planned to leave a note similar to the one found on the dining table along with the pistol. He believed that when the police read the note, they would conclude that this was the crime of an unhappy woman who saw no other way but to kill herself. Donald told Captain James that on May 25th, he had secretly taken Johanna's pistol and kept it with him all day, pretending to be preparing for his graduation ceremony. Before carrying out the rest of his plan, he decided to go to the supermarket to have his image recorded by the surveillance cameras, in order to use this evidence to prove his innocence. Before the murder, Donald had begun to show an interest in shooting practice. Although his best friend Alex Willis found this strange, Alex did not suspect anything as he did not think Donald would want to use a gun to attack someone. Donald's considerations and conclusions left everyone who heard them afterwards confused. James shared that this young man admitted that he had even planned the emotions he would express on his face when the police arrived at the scene. He also thought about how he would support himself after losing the steady income provided by Mark, and decided to take advantage of the sympathy of his loved ones as long as he could. While his family supported him, he decided to take up sports to improve his health and fitness. If he had no other choice, he would consider joining the police force or the army. When considering the possibility of his plan succeeding, Donald realized that it would be easier to kill his mother and stepfather than to admit that he had been lying to them for nearly 5 years. In April 2016, the West Virginia Supreme Court released a legal opinion. According to the opinion, Donald was charged with first-degree murder and attempted murder 1 month after his arrest in June 2013. Even before the trial, Donald and his legal team sought to delay the trial. A few weeks before the trial was scheduled to begin, the defendant, Donald Dunn, who had been held in solitary confinement, underwent surgery on his right hand. His attorneys used the surgery as a reason to request a delay, arguing that during the initial hearings, he would be under the influence of strong painkillers. To decide this issue, the court first requested his medical records. However, this request was denied on the grounds that, at the preliminary hearing, there was no evidence that Donald was partially incapacitated due to the use of painkillers. Therefore, the court determined that he was competent to attend trial and approved the continuation of the scheduled trial. The trial took place in August 2014, over a year after Mark's death. It was presided over by Judge John Hutchinson, with David White representing Donald and Christine Keller from the Raleigh County Prosecutor's Office. Mark's 2 sisters, along with one of their nieces, traveled more than 15,000 kilometers from Australia to attend the trial of the man they had considered a family member for nearly 20 years. Although there were no details from witness testimony or evidence presented to the jury, and no photographs or video footage, the defense wanted to include in their opening argument that Donald was under the influence of illegal drugs at the time of the crime. However, there was no evidence that this had ever been mentioned before or confirmed by any toxicology tests. On August 14, 2014, Donald Dunn was convicted of the murder of his stepfather, Mark McDermott, the attempted murder of his mother, Johanna McDermott, and the use of a firearm. About a month later, on September 5 of the same year, Judge John Hutchinson sentenced Donald Dunn to life in prison without parole for the murder of his stepfather and 15 years in prison for the attempted murder of his mother. After the verdict was announced, Johanna read an emotional letter to the court. In the letter, Donald's mother mentioned that something unfortunate had happened in her son's life. This could have been due to the decline in health of his grandparents, the pressure she put on him to go to college, or his exposure to violent video games at a very young age. She expressed her disapproval of the way her son was perceived by the public and stated that she did not agree with his sentence. However, Judge John explained that Johanna's objections did not affect his decision. He felt that the sentence he imposed was the only way to restore justice in an unjust situation. He sympathized with the defendant's mother, who, despite the circumstances, wanted to protect her son from the consequences of his actions. After the verdict, Mark's sister and father still could not understand how Donald could take the life of a man who had raised him as his own son for 19 years. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Rowan Ford. Rowan Ford was born on April 11, 1998, in San Diego, California. When she was young, her parents divorced, and her mother, Colleen, moved with her to a small town called Stella, Missouri. Colleen later met a man named David, and they married. Colleen already had several children from a previous marriage, and soon after their marriage, she and David had a daughter together. Rowan has 2 older sisters and 2 older brothers, and they are very close. She enjoys spending time outdoors, biking around town, swimming, and pursuing her passion for painting. She also enjoys attending Sunday school at her local church, where she often volunteers to help children who are having trouble with their homework. In November 2007, when Rowan was 9 years old, she was in 4th grade at her local elementary school. Her mother worked the night shift at a store, while her stepfather was often at the farm during the day. As a result, Rowan was often left to fend for herself, which helped her become very independent. On November 2nd, she was home alone, as usual. Colleen went to work, and her stepfather had not yet returned from the farm. The next morning, around 9 o'clock, Colleen returned home from her night shift and checked Rowan's room, but her daughter was not there. She asked her husband if he knew where Rowan was, and he told her that Rowan had asked him if she could stay the night at a friend's house. He agreed without asking the friend's name, since their town was small and he wasn't worried about her safety. Colleen felt worried and decided to ask all of Rowan's friends. Since their town only had a few streets, this didn't take long. However, none of Rowan's friends had seen her, and she had not spent the night at any of their homes. This made her mother even more anxious. Colleen searched all over town but could not find her daughter. She finally returned home and told her husband that Rowan was missing. She asked him to contact the police to report the incident, but he assured her that everything was fine and that Rowan would be home soon. After waiting for a few more hours without seeing Rowan, Colleen decided to call 911 and take matters into her own hands. The local sheriff immediately organized a search operation. He went to Colleen's house to interview David, the last person to see Rowan before she disappeared. David said that he had been working on the farm with his co-worker Christopher that evening when Nathan, a mutual friend of theirs, came to visit. They decided to go to David's house to drink and play pool. They stopped by the store to buy some alcohol before heading to David's house, where they stayed for a few hours. That night, Christopher asked Nathan to drive him to a nearby town to pick up car. They convinced David to join them to continue their party. Before leaving the house, Christopher checked to see if Rowan was asleep in her room and found her already asleep. After David left with his friends, they stopped at a store to buy more alcohol and then went to Christopher's trailer, where they continued drinking for about an hour. David then decided to go home and asked Nathan for a ride. Nathan agreed but chose to take a detour rather than the highway, as he was quite drunk and did not want to get in trouble with the police. Nathan dropped David off and drove home, while David went straight to bed. Shortly after, Rowan woke him up and asked if she could stay the night at a friend's house. Without thinking much of it, he agreed and fell asleep. The police approached the case with suspicion. What puzzled them most was that a 9-year-old girl would decide to go to a friend's house in the middle of the night, especially since her stepfather had not asked about the friend she was visiting. The police chief suspected that David might be hiding something or had something to do with Rowan's disappearance, but there was no evidence to support this suspicion. The police searched the town and the surrounding area until late at night. Locals quickly joined the search because they knew the Rowan family and wanted to help. Stella had a population of only about 150, so news of Rowan's disappearance spread rapidly throughout the area. Locals usually felt safe letting their children play outside, as there was not much going on in such a peaceful place. However, when Rowan disappeared without a trace and the police could not find her throughout the day, the people of Stella became extremely panicked. On the first day of the search, nothing was found. Then, on November 4th, the police went to the neighboring town and spoke to Christopher, who confirmed David's story. However, Christopher added that his friend had not contacted him since that evening, and he had only learned of Rowan's disappearance that same day. The police expanded the search and brought in more volunteers, but they still could not find Rowan or any clues regarding her whereabouts. The next morning, the FBI joined the investigation while local police continued to search for Rowan in the area around town. Detectives focused on the possibility of kidnapping. They strongly doubted the David story, as it seemed very suspicious. The police also checked with all of Rowan's friends and confirmed that she had not visited any of them that night. Investigators interviewed David several times, and his testimony varied in detail, further raising suspicions about his involvement. For example, he provided different times for being away that night and even stated that Rowan may not have asked him before going to visit a friend. FBI agents further discovered that on the night of her missing, David had asked his mother to lend him her car, although he had not initially disclosed this to the police. As a result, the police seized both cars for testing, but experts found no evidence. Detectives continued discussions with Christopher and Nathan, as both were with David that night. Christopher was invited to the police station and told the same story as the day before. He also agreed to take a polygraph test, which showed no signs of deception. A few hours after Christopher left the station and returned to work, he saw Chief Clark's car. Christopher signaled for Chief Clark to stop. Sheriff Clark is the police chief in the town of Whitten and has known Christopher for 17 years, since Christopher was a child. Clark was a friend of Christopher's adoptive parents, and Christopher had always respected him. He often turned to him for advice or help in times of trouble. Sheriff Clark contacted Christopher, and they discussed Rowan's disappearance. Clark was aware of the case but was not directly involved, as the search was being handled by the Stella Police Department. During their conversation, Clark suspected that Christopher was withholding information, as Rowan's life was in danger and her fate was still uncertain. Therefore, Clark decided to share these suspicions with the FBI, contacting agents to explain his concerns. Investigators suspect that Christopher may be withholding important information about Rowan's disappearance, which could implicate her stepfather. It is possible that he asked Christopher to lie and alter some details in his account of the events of that night. Christopher now fears that he will be considered an accomplice if he tells the truth. Sheriff Clark informed the FBI agents that he had a good and trusting relationship with Christopher, so he wanted to help convince him to share information. That same day, Christopher went to Colleen's home to ask her about the progress of the search. Simultaneously, the FBI agents also visited Rowan's mother again. When they met with Christopher, they continued to ask him a few questions, and he once again confirmed that the events of that night happened exactly as he had described them. However, this time he also mentioned that he did not rule out the possibility that David was involved in Rowan's disappearance and expressed his desire to help them find the truth, no matter how frightening it might be. He suggested wearing a wiretap and approaching David to try to get him to confess. However, the detectives decided not to use such tactics. Instead, they asked Christopher if he could think of any locations where his friend might have hidden Rowan's body, and he suggested several places. The next day, the police began investigating these locations while continuing to search the area around Stella's house. FBI agents once again brought David in for questioning, but he repeatedly denied any involvement. Detectives also searched David's house in the hope of finding clues, but nothing was discovered. On November 7th, the police asked Christopher to return to the station to obtain his consent to search the safe in David's home. Christopher had been living with David for several months due to not having his own place, and some of his belongings were still there. Christopher gave the police permission to search the safe, his trailer, and his car. He also voluntarily provided a DNA sample and agreed to answer additional questions from the detectives. They began questioning him that evening and again asked him to confirm David's story. This time, however, Christopher suddenly admitted that his friend's story was not entirely true. The investigators began to pressure him to tell them what really happened. This pressure caused Christopher to become agitated. He said that if the police were going to treat him like a criminal and try to implicate him in Rowan's disappearance, he would not continue the conversation. The detectives then had to end the interview, and Christopher left the station. That night, he went to see Chief Clark and told him the whole story. He complained that the detectives were treating him as a suspect and said that he might need to hire a lawyer. The chief replied that it was his right, but asked him to understand that the police were only doing what they could to find Rowan. In response, Christopher stated that he would not speak to them anymore and that if he wanted to share any more information, he would only speak to Sheriff Clark. He continued to persuade Christopher to share what he knew. After a while, Christopher began to cry and said that he had always loved Rowan and would never hurt her. During his time living in David's house, Christopher developed a close relationship with Rowan and the other children. They began to consider him a member of the family and even called him Uncle Christopher. Sheriff Clark realized that Christopher was about to reveal everything he knew. However, just as Christopher was about to share, someone came to the police station, causing Sheriff Clark to temporarily lose focus. Christopher then left the office without revealing what he was about to say. Sheriff Clark eventually contacted the FBI and informed them about the conversation. He explained that Christopher was willing to share most of what he knew, but warned that if he was pressed too hard, Christopher might refuse to talk and seek legal counsel. Clark offered to give Christopher time to think it over, and the detectives agreed. The search for Rowan continued the next day without success. However, the situation changed on November 9th, a week after Rowan went missing. Search parties found Rowan's body in a remote area near a town called Powell, about 10 miles from where Stella lived. The body was covered in leaves and debris, with only a sock remaining. Medical examiners determined that Rowan had been strangled and sexually assaulted. Shortly after the body was discovered, FBI agents contacted Chief Clark and asked him to speak with Christopher again, hoping he would reveal more information. The chief learned that Christopher had come to the police station earlier that morning when Chief Clark was not there and had informed other officers that he urgently needed to see him. The chief searched everywhere for Christopher but could not find him. Christopher then contacted Chief Clark himself. He expressed obvious distress and concern that he was being followed. He explained that after hearing about the discovery of Rowan's body, he had driven around town to calm down and had noticed a gray car following him. Chief Clark claimed to be unaware of any surveillance activity and asked to meet Christopher directly. When Christopher met with the investigators, he expressed concern for his safety. He feared that after the discovery of Rowan's body, he might be charged with murder and that someone would take revenge on him. Clark took him to the police station and explained that now that the case had been ruled a murder, it was time for him to reveal everything he knew. Christopher began to cry. The sheriff asked him to tell him what David had done to Rowan. Christopher said that there were too many people at the police station and that he did not want to discuss it there. He suggested going to a quieter place and mentioned a small bridge a few miles from their town. The sheriff agreed, and they drove there together. As they got out of the car, Christopher suddenly raised his hands and asked the police to handcuff him. The sheriff was surprised and said that it was unnecessary, but Christopher insisted that after what he had said, the police had to do so. Christopher then began to recount the story he had told the police many times. He went to his trailer with Nathan and David, where they continued drinking. After a while, his friends decided to go home, and David asked Nathan to drive them. They said they would take a detour to avoid the police. However, Christopher then suddenly announced that he wanted to sexually assault Rowan and that he planned to do so. Knowing that it would take his friends a long time to take a detour through the fields, he drove straight to David's house on the main highway. He then barged into Rowan's room, picked her up, and carried her to his car, intending not to wake her. Christopher then took Rowan to his trailer, where he assaulted her. According to Christopher, Rowan had just woken up and tried to resist but was unable to escape. Christopher did not turn on the lights or talk to Rowan because he did not want her to recognize him. After committing this act, Christopher intended to take Rowan home and leave. But the plan did not go as intended. When Christopher carried Rowan out of the trailer, the moon was shining brightly, and Rowan saw Christopher's face clearly. Panicking, Christopher grabbed a rope and strangled her. When she died, he loaded her body into the car and began to think about what to do next. Initially, he wanted to throw her off the bridge, the same bridge where he stood with Sheriff Clark, but he realized her body would be found too quickly. So, he got into the driver's seat and started driving around the county, considering other options. Soon, he remembered a large pit near a neighboring town and headed there. He threw the victim's body into the pit and tried to cover it with branches, but the pit was too large to cover completely. When he returned to the car, he noticed traces of Rowan's blood on his clothes and the mattress. Christopher realized he needed to get rid of the pants, underwear, and rope used to kill the victim. He gathered all of these items and planned to put them in a large barrel to burn. However, Christopher quickly realized that such a fire would certainly attract attention, so he dragged the barrel into the shed, closed the door, and set it on fire. Sheriff Clark was surprised by this story. He had previously believed that David had committed the crime and that Christopher was just hiding some information. It was hard to believe that a man he had known for nearly 20 years could be so brutal. Christopher had 3 young children, and although he had not lived with them since his divorce, he had always seemed like a nice man. But the truth was much colder. After Christopher finished telling his story, he voluntarily went to the police station. The sheriff did not handcuff him. It was only after they arrived and the man repeated his confession to the FBI agents that he was arrested for murder. Christopher also signed a voluntary consent form to allow his trailer and car to be searched. He eventually said that he regretted his actions and cried like a baby all the next day. Investigators went to inform David that Christopher had confessed to the murder. Based on David's behavior and inconsistent statements, they suspected that he might have been protecting his friend. However, they discovered something even more shocking. When brought in for questioning, David changed his testimony of events. According to David's testimony, when he came home and found Rowan not in her room, he suspected that Christopher might have kidnapped her. So he took his mother's car and drove to Christopher's trailer. When David entered the trailer, he found her lying on the bed with Christopher. Instead of saving Rowan, David decided to join in and bully her as well. David then helped his friend dispose of the body. He stated that throughout the incident, he was shocked and could not remember anything that happened. The detectives, who were initially surprised by this incident, contacted Christopher again to confirm David's statement. However, Christopher insisted that his friend was not involved and that everything happened exactly as he had previously said. This further confused the detectives, but Christopher's statement was consistent with the facts. A medical expert confirmed that Rowan had been strangled with a thin wire, a detail that only the killer would know. During the search of the trailer, the police found a container of ashes. In addition, they found a hair in the trailer that matched Rowan's. Although investigators were unable to determine who was telling the truth, both men made accusations against one another. As a result, David was also arrested, and both cases went to trial. During the trial, Christopher requested that all of his statements be removed from the record, arguing that he did not know they could be used against him and that the police had violated his rights. However, the judge rejected this request because all of his conversations with investigators had been completely voluntary. Christopher also tried to explain the difficult circumstances of his childhood. He had experienced many family changes since he was young, which had a significant impact on his development. Christopher also saw a specialist who confirmed that he exhibited signs of developmental problems but could not help him avoid punishment. In 2012, 5 years after the murder, he was sentenced to death. He attempted to appeal the conviction but was unsuccessful. For David, the situation was much more complicated. He admitted to attacking and killing Rowan, but his testimony contradicted Christopher's. If the prosecution decided to charge David with murder, Christopher's conviction would likely be overturned, and David could also evade responsibility because there was no solid evidence against him, such as DNA. The prosecution could not afford to make such a risky claim. In fact, they were still uncertain about David's involvement in the case. They did not rule out the possibility that David had committed the crime alongside Christopher, but there was no evidence to support this theory. In the end, a difficult decision was made. To avoid the risk of overturning Christopher's conviction, they reduced David's charges to significantly lesser ones. David pleaded guilty to 2 counts, child endangerment and obstruction of justice. He was sentenced to 11 years in prison, with a minimum of 5 years to serve. Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Madison Sparrow. Madison Elizabeth Sparrow was born on September 12, 2003, in Norfolk, Virginia, United States. She is the daughter of Heather Sparrow Murphy and Richard Prestige. In her family, Madison has older sisters Gwendolyn. Gwendolyn, who was born in 1999 in Durango, Colorado, is Madison's older sister from her father's previous relationship. The family later settled in Newark, Newcastle County, Delaware. On October 5, 2010, her family welcomed a new member, baby Molly. Madison loves children and often takes on the role of the eldest in the family, which includes 8 cousins. She enjoys doing things that make people happy and frequently spends time playing with children or participating in entertainment shows such as magic shows. It is easy to catch Madison in a happy moment. Her laughter is contagious, showing her youthful and cheerful spirit. However, Madison can also be thoughtful and dreamy at times. Madison's father said that since she was a child, she has displayed her wisdom through careful observation and reflection before making decisions. Additionally, she is a very emotional person. Her warm hugs can uplift anyone's mood. For her friends and family, Madison is always a reliable confidant who genuinely cares about the happiness of those she loves. Madison is a curious girl who loves to explore new things, which led her to join the Girl Scouts, an organization for girls around the world. By the fall of 2012, all the Girl Scout troops were full, but thanks to her mother's efforts, Madison was able to join a group. Madison's mother led a new Brownies troop, and Madison joined at age 9. In recent years, Madison has become one of the top cookie sellers, winning numerous medals for her impressive sales. She has been involved with the Girl Scouts for nearly 10 years, during which time she has built a strong network of friendships. Currently, Madison volunteers with her younger SI. Stir Molly's troop, as she enjoys working with other young people and making a positive impact on their lives. Madison is a kind and generous girl who acts with commitment to her faith in God and service to her country. She is passionate about helping others and strictly adheres to the principles of the Girl Scouts. However, like any other young girl, Madison also enjoys spending time having fun and living life to the fullest. Even in her teenage years, she is always the life of the parties. She often plans parties with her friends, ranging from movie nights to full-blown beauty parties with manicures and pedicures. Madison frequently stays up all night, so it is not unusual for her to struggle to wake up by noon the next day. Before finishing elementary school, Madison met Annika Stalczynski, a girl her age who was born in Newark on July 9, 2003. They quickly became close friends and studied for exams together. Information about Annika's life is limited, but it is known that her parents are Robert Stalczynski and Robin Kars. In 2004, her family lived on Arona Mink Drive in Newark. After finishing elementary school, Annika and Madison went to middle school, where they made a new friend named Noah Sharp. Noah, a native of Newark, was born on August 23, 2001. Little is known about Noah's family and background, except that his mother, Nikki Sharp, has 2 other children, David and Brianna. The trio often went out for ice cream or spent time in the large green spaces around the city. When Noah and Madison met by chance, they felt an attraction to each other, and after just a few months, a teenage romance developed. At first, they were madly in love, but in early 2020, after more than a year together, Madison decided to break up with Noah without providing any reasons. They parted ways amicably and agreed to remain friends, but Noah was heartbroken because he still loved her deeply. During this time, Annika became Noah's trusted friend. They began to see each other more often and text almost every day. Although Noah's heart was still broken, he began dating another girl after a while. Despite his relationship with Annika, Noah kept in touch with Madison. He visited Madison on her 17th birthday, September 12, 2020, and brought her a gift. It seemed that Noah was still upset about the breakup. When Annika learned about her boyfriend's meeting with his ex-girlfriend, she felt jealous. She could not accept that he was still friends with his ex. Noah's sadness also turned to anger. He wanted to hurt Madison because he felt hurt. The following week, blinded by hatred and jealousy, Annika and Noah began planning to end Madison's life. They exchanged text messages, used FaceTime, and met in person to discuss weapons and how to dispose of the body after the crime. The messages they sent each other while planning the attack were horrifying and revealed their intention to cause Madison great pain. Annika made several suggestions, including using a knife to inflict severe damage to her heart. They also discussed the possibility of using a handgun or another blunt object. According to official documents, they quickly dismissed the idea of a handgun because it would make too much noise. Although Noah was not entirely confident, they decided to use a blunt object. During their discussions, they calculated the number of bricks they would need to hold Madison's body underwater if they decided to dump her there. When in doubt, one idea was to bury her since Noah could dig a hole and knew where to find a shovel. Eventually, they came up with what they believed was the perfect plan. Madison was an ice cream lover and also cherished Halloween. She eagerly awaited October each year to celebrate her favorite holiday. Throughout the month, Annika had been studying Madison's interests and taking advantage of them. On Friday, October 2, 2020, she called Madison to ask her out for ice cream and to spend a day together. Madison agreed because she hadn't seen her friend in a long time and also wanted to buy a gift for Molly, whose birthday was just 3 days away. That day, Madison wore black tights, denim shorts, gray boots, a blue sweatshirt that said New Jersey, and white ghost earrings. She rarely wore jewelry, especially earrings, but since she didn't have much time to prepare for Halloween, Madison decided to buy these earrings to match the holiday. At 2:44 p.m., she said goodbye to her mother, Heather, promised to see her later, and then left. Although nothing unusual happened at that time, the events that followed were extremely unsettling. That was the last time her mother saw her alive. Just hours later, Heather began receiving abusive text messages from Madison's phone number, along with information suggesting that Madison was supposed to be leaving the country. Heather thought it was a joke. She replied and wished Madison good luck in her endeavor, joking that she had forgotten to bring her passport, which was in the safe. However, Heather received no response. Even when she called her daughter, no one answered. Heather, who was hanging out with Molly and taking her to scout meetings and swimming lessons, was confused. The lack of response began to worry her. Heather decided to call Annika, knowing that they would meet later in the day. When Annika answered, she burst into tears and explained that Madison had insulted her and that she had dropped her off near a store. Annika then suggested contacting Noah, but he did not respond. Frustrated, Heather asked Annika to contact Noah again. The three of them chatted but did not get any information. Frustrated, Heather decided to go home. On the way home, Heather received several messages from her daughter's friends, who had also received strange messages and wanted to know what was going on. When she got home and did not search for any clues, Heather found no signs that her daughter had run away. Even the money she had received for her birthday, her clothes, and her C.D. cards were in her room. These messages were strange and nonsensical. Madison had no reason to run away, especially without a bag containing her clothes and money. When Madison did not return home at around 8:30 p.m., Heather contacted 911 and reported her daughter missing. Despite repeated attempts to reach out to people, all her efforts were in vain. After being informed of the situation, Heather's parents traveled from another city to support their daughter. Furthermore, she notified Madison's father, with whom she had divorced, who now lived in Colorado. He quickly shared the information on social media, calling for help in finding his daughter. On Saturday, October 3, 2020, the search for Madison, 17, who was reported missing, continued. Delaware State Police issued a yellow alert to activate all necessary procedures to search for missing persons. Over the course of 2 days, police search teams, family and friends searched farms near the University of Delaware, where Madison was last seen. The media also disseminated information about the search, asking people to come forward with any details. Delaware State Police have begun questioning Madison's friends, and evidence points to her ex-boyfriend as a suspect. According to information, the girl went to the woods in Newark behind the elementary school, where she was also seen with Noah on the day she went missing. Detectives then detained and questioned him for nearly 9 hours from October 4th to 5th, but he claimed he had no idea what had happened. He eventually confessed to his actions and revealed that Annika was an accomplice. He explained that Annika hated Madison because she was jealous of their relationship. He also shared his deep feelings about breaking up with her. According to Noah's testimony, he drove Madison to the woods behind the elementary school, then hid behind the bushes with an aluminum baseball bat. As Madison happily walked along the trail, he suddenly emerged from his hiding place and hit Madison twice in the head. Noah admitted to putting all his strength into the second blow, adding that it was then that he became enraged after months of losing control over the girl who had broken his heart. Unable to control himself, he continued to strike her body multiple times. After the attack, the two used Annika's car to transport her body to a location near the intersection of I-95 and the Delaware state line, about 15 minutes away from the scene and near a warehouse. Once there, they attempted to drown the body in the river. Unsuccessful, they opted to bury it in a shallow grave they dug in the same location. Armed with detailed information from the suspect, investigators carefully searched the designated area. There, they discovered an aluminum baseball bat used as a weapon, with traces of blood. The crime scene also revealed the victim's clothing, with some items showing evidence of having been burned. The suspect then led law enforcement to a large plot of land near the intersection of I-95 and the Delaware state line, where he and his accomplice had secretly buried the body. On Monday, October 5, 2020, Corporal Heather Piper announced the discovery of Madison's body. The news sent shockwaves through the victim's family, friends, and community. Several days later, on Saturday, October 9th, hundreds gathered at the high school football field to remember and honor Madison. An autopsy revealed that Madison died from blunt force trauma to the head. Experts also found the DNA of Noah and Annika on physical evidence collected at the scene and where the bodies were found. Noah faces charges of first-degree murder, possession of a deadly weapon during the commission of a felony, and first-degree conspiracy. He has been placed in a correctional facility on a $1 million bail. More than a month after the tragic event and after processing the necessary evidence, Annika, 17, was also arrested. She was indicted by a Newcastle County grand jury on charges of first-degree murder, possession of a deadly weapon during the commission of a felony, and first-degree conspiracy. Meanwhile, Madison's family has been struggling. Heather has repeatedly stated that the exact cause of her daughter's death may never be known. Although Noah admitted his guilt to the police, he did not plead guilty in his formal court filing. This has led to speculation that his defense attorney may argue that he was mentally unstable. In some cases, attorneys often attempt to defend their clients by referring to their mental health status. Similarly, during a preliminary hearing, Noah's attorney stated that Noah was being treated for schizophrenia and was under the care of a psychiatrist at the time of the murder. Noah's attorney confirmed that he had been injured in Chester County, Pennsylvania, about 3 weeks before the murder. The attorney explained that Noah had suffered memory loss and other problems as a result of the head injury. However, the attorney did not provide specifics. Information about the cause and severity of the injury. In May 2021, Annika pleaded guilty to first-degree murder and first-degree conspiracy. Her attorneys negotiated with prosecutors, and Annika agreed to testify against Noah regarding his intention to kill Madison. Several people close to the victim had reported to the police about alter ego, Noah's alleged alter ego. However, prosecutors argued that Noah himself had disseminated this information, intending to use it at trial later as part of his plan to kill Madison. After 2 years of waiting, the defendant's trial began on October 20, 2022, in Newcastle County. During the proceedings, approximately 30 witnesses were called, primarily by Deputy Attorney General Matt Foley and an assistant prosecutor. The courtroom played hours of video recordings of Noah's interviews with state police detectives. Viewers heard Noah's changing story until he finally confessed. The defense tried to challenge this evidence, arguing that the police had interrogated their client for too long. Attorney Monica Jerome noted that the detectives interfered with the interrogation, directing Noah to say what they wanted and forcing him to say it. However, most people viewed this as a last-ditch effort to justify the murderer in any way possible. The prosecution presented text messages exchanged between Noah and Annika, which they claimed showed that the two had planned the crime. Faced with this evidence, the defense attempted to convince the court that someone else had control of the suspect's device and that he was not the one who contacted Annika. However, the testimonies of Noah's mother and brother contradicted each other several times when they were called to testify. Nikia stated that her son came home on the evening of October 2 without being wet. Meanwhile, David said that his brother was wet and looked like he had just come out of a swamp. Nikia reported that when her son arrived home, Annika came in and seemed normal. David, on the other hand, claimed that Annika came in angry and slammed the door. Prosecutor Matt Froley asked Nikia if she had discussed the evidence against Noah with him, to which she replied no. However, prosecutors obtained a recording of a phone call that took place a month before the trial, in which the defendant and his mother discussed surveillance camera footage at the elementary school. During that conversation, Noah informed his mother that his face was not visible in the video showing him and Annika near the school an hour before Madison was murdered. His mother reacted with relief at this news. However, the video showed an African-American man of similar height and build to Noah, holding a baseball bat while walking into the woods with a girl. The defense questioned the defendant's relatives about the two injuries he allegedly sustained. The first was a head injury on September 13, 2020. The second was another unconfirmed injury he suffered after falling off his bike, just hours before his police interview on October 4. Noah's lawyers argued that these injuries could have caused dissociative amnesia, attempting to justify the statements he made to the police. The court considered the arguments of both the prosecution and the defense regarding the victim's injuries. Annika, the accused, gave a 3-hour testimony that supported the prosecution's arguments. During her testimony, she calmly explained that Noah had convinced her that Madison had talked badly about her behind her back. However, Madison's family and friends insisted that she had never spoken ill of her friends. After 8 days of trial and more than 250 pieces of evidence presented by the prosecutors, the jury took just 3 hours to reach its final verdict. Noah Sharp was found guilty on all counts, including first-degree murder, and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. When the jury's verdict was announced, neither Noah nor his mother showed any emotion, Noah simply reneged and smiled at his mother. The Madison family cried tears of relief before leaving the courtroom. In Annika's case, when she was convicted, prosecutors stated that under Delaware law, she would be sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 30 years, since she was a juvenile at the time of the crime. Hello, crime enthusiasts, are you ready for another chilling investigation? The case of Brooke Skylar Richardson. Carroll, Ohio, is home to several families, including the Richardson family. This family consists of Kim and Scott Richardson, who are very involved in their children's lives. Their son, Jackson, loves playing football, while their daughter, Brooke Skylar, commonly known as Skylar, is a cheerleader. Skylar has struggled with an eating disorder since she was very young. Her mother, Kim, first noticed the problem when Skylar was in 6th grade at the age of 12. Skylar's hyperfocus on food and exercise became very apparent when she refused to buy gum because it had more than 5 calories. As a cheerleader, Skylar needs to be light and easy to throw. The pressure to maintain a certain weight makes her battle with weight loss even more difficult. She is constantly preoccupied with her body image and is afraid of gaining weight. Skylar's struggle with her weight and body image began during cheerleading practice. In an effort to maintain her weight, she started vomiting after meals. However, this behavior only worsened her problems once practice ended. After that, Skylar's struggle with her weight became more intense. She may experience periods of overeating in a short time, consuming more than her body needs. This is often accompanied by periods of starvation, during which Skylar restricts her food intake or follows a strict diet. Skylar's parents noticed changes in her behavior and became concerned about her health. They tried to express these concerns to her, but whenever the subject was brought up, Skylar became quiet. She did not want to talk about it and always refused any attempts to address her weight changes. Skylar's parents sought help from various professionals, including doctors and therapists, hoping that these interventions would help their daughter reduce her anxiety. After a clinical evaluation, Skylar was diagnosed with body dysmorphic disorder. This psychological condition causes individuals to focus excessively on a perceived flaw in their appearance, leading to impairment in daily functioning and distress. In July 2016, during her senior year of high school, Skylar began dating a friend's cousin. However, the relationship did not last, and by January 2017, Skylar had a new boyfriend, a high school student named Brandon. Skylar was in a good mood and appeared to have gained weight. Her parents, Kim and Scott, believed that their daughter's eating disorder had improved. They noticed that she looked healthy and genuinely happy. In February, Skylar chose a tight-fitting evening gown that required a tie. In mid-March, she went on vacation with her family. During the trip, she wore a 2-piece swimsuit, and her mother commented that she looked great. Kim believed that her daughter and Brandon were having sex, so she wanted Skylar to start taking birth control pills. She thought this would protect her daughter's health and prevent the risk of an unwanted pregnancy. In mid-April 2017, Skylar went to her mother's gynecologist to get a prescription for birth control pills while her mother, Kim, waited outside the clinic. After seeing the doctor, Skylar left the clinic with tears in her eyes. Kim immediately asked her daughter why she was so sad, and Skylar replied that it was a painful experience for her. Kim believed her daughter was telling the truth, unaware of the real reason behind the tears. During Skylar's visit to her OB/GYN, the doctor informed her that she was about 8 months pregnant. Skylar asked the doctor not to reveal this information to anyone, as she was not ready to share the news with her family. On May 5th, 9 days later, Skylar and her boyfriend Brandon went to prom. Even though Skylar was in the final stages of her pregnancy, she still managed to fit into her prom dress. 2 weeks after Skylar attended the prom, on July 14, 2017, police officers arrived at her home to meet with her parents, Kim and Scott. The officers stated that they needed to talk to Skylar about an incident she may have witnessed and assured her that nothing was wrong. Scott decided to drive Skylar to the police station, where they wanted to question her about an emergency call the police had received from a fertility clinic. Specifically, the doctor had reported that a patient had just given birth and may have buried the baby in the yard. After receiving this notice, the police immediately arrested Skylar and took her to a room for questioning. They did not allow her father to participate in the questioning. Before the questioning began, the police explained her rights to her. The investigator then started asking questions about the phone call from the doctor's office. The caller informed the police that on April 26, a doctor had examined Skylar and concluded that she was pregnant. However, Skylar later revealed to the doctor that the baby was dead and that she had buried the baby in her backyard. During her interview with the police, Skylar recounted a tragic event from her past. On May 7, 2017, she said that she had given birth to a baby girl in the bathroom, but the baby was not breathing and had no heartbeat. Therefore, she decided to bury the baby alone and did not tell anyone about the incident. To do this, Skylar quietly went downstairs, took a garden shovel, and dug a shallow grave in her backyard, where she buried the baby. She then left a vase with flowers at the burial site to mark and remember her deceased child. During a conversation with her parents, Skylar announced that she had chosen the name Annabelle for the baby and revealed that the baby's father was the cousin of a close friend she had dated briefly before meeting Brandon. Crime scene investigators went to the Richardson home to search for the child's remains. They searched the backyard by pulling weeds and sweeping the ground. The police carried out this process meticulously and carefully, removing any debris that might hinder their investigation. After overcoming the difficulties caused by the overgrown vegetation, they were able to collect a significant amount of evidence. After removing the weeds and cleaning the area, the police found several human bones, including skull fragments. These bones were carefully collected and placed in small body bags to preserve the evidence. Investigators ensured that the bones were kept intact. Later, one investigator noted that the bones had a smell, while another had difficulty determining whether they were rocks or human bones due to their small size. At the same time, the coroner confirmed the discovery of hair and small fingernails, but no organs or items that could help identify. After more than 5 hours of questioning, Skylar and her parents were allowed to return home. However, just 6 days after the incident, Skylar was contacted by the police and told that she needed to come to the police station again. To reassure her father, Scott, the police assured her that she would not face any legal action. During Skylar's next meeting with the police, they informed her that they had received new information from the medical examiner's office. This information revealed a discrepancy between Skylar's original story and what the police had discovered. Specifically, the medical examiner had found that the baby's bones showed signs of being burned, based on an analysis of the remains. Skylar was confused by the news of the baby being burned. She claimed that she did not set the fire and denied harming her child. However, the police still wanted Skylar to admit that she had killed her daughter and then burned the body to hide the evidence. During the investigation, the police suggested that Skylar may have wanted to cremate the baby so that the ashes would not be scattered. However, This suggestion only made Skylar more confused, and she still insisted that she did not burn the baby. Skylar suddenly changed her story to the police, saying that she had a lighter and may have used it to try to burn the baby's remains. She also suggested that the baby may have been born alive and had been crying, even making gurgling or small noises at one point. Additionally, Skylar admitted that she had held the newborn too tightly, which may have led to the baby's death. During an hour-long interrogation, the police gathered enough evidence to arrest Skylar on a charge of reckless homicide. Law enforcement suspected that Skylar had caused the child's death by suffocation. After presenting her case to a grand jury, she was charged with aggravated murder, a crime that carries a life sentence in Ohio. Skylar pleaded not guilty to other charges, including involuntary manslaughter, abuse of a corpse, and child abuse. She spent several days in jail until her family was able to post $50,000 bail to secure her temporary release. Following her child's death, Skylar became the focus of media attention and was subjected to intense public scrutiny. This severely affected her family's daily life. They felt unsafe and were forced to retreat into their home to seek peace and quiet. The threats had disastrous consequences, making it even harder for them to step outside. People who saw them often took pictures, which added to their stress and put enormous pressure on them. The constant public scrutiny became unbearable and affected almost every aspect of their daily lives. Although Skylar's lawyer believes that she made a false confession and that her newborn baby's death was not intentional, the prosecution has not changed its position. Despite new evidence that contradicts their initial assessment, they continue to pursue the case. A key piece of evidence that the prosecution initially presented was the results of a medical expert's examination, which stated that the child's remains had been burned. However, after a thorough examination and additional information, the expert retracted his initial assessment. Following a detailed physical examination of the child, the expert concluded that there was no evidence of burning. The prosecution's approach remained unchanged despite the new information. They continued to focus on Skylar's confession that she had tried to burn the remains, but this contradicted the evidence and raised questions about whether their case was actually convincing. This shows that the state was convicting despite flaws in the evidence. Skylar's lawyers fought hard at trial to defend her against the charges. Thanks to the efforts of her family, Skylar was able to raise the $50,000 bail she needed to be released. However, her bail was conditional on her wearing an electronic monitoring bracelet that would track her whereabouts. Skylar has been largely confined to her home and has had limited public exposure. She feels isolated and prefers to spend most of her time with her family dogs. Over the past 12 months, Skylar's life has undergone major changes as her plans to attend the University of Cincinnati have been put on hold while she awaits trial for her child's murder. The charges were so serious that Skylar's attorney filed a motion to change the venue, but the court denied it. As a result, Skylar was forced to continue attending the trial in the original jurisdiction as planned. The stress and pressure of the trial weighed heavily on her life. Moreover, Skylar had to deal with the psychological and emotional trauma caused by the charges, along with social isolation. Spending time with her dogs brought her comfort and a sense of solace. They became her trusted companions and main support during the time she awaited the trial. At the same time, her family remained by her side, supporting and encouraging her through this difficult period. They expressed their belief in her innocence and hoped that the truth would soon be revealed. Despite the difficult challenges, Skylar persisted in fighting for her freedom. In July 2019, the state made a surprise offer to Skylar's defense attorney. Skylar would plead guilty to the remaining charges and serve a 15-year prison sentence. In exchange, the state would withdraw the felony murder charge. Skylar's parents were uncertain about the decision and debated whether she should accept the deal. After careful consideration, Skylar decided to decline the offer. Her parents were deeply troubled by her decision and wondered if their daughter had made the right choice. However, they understood that it was ultimately Skylar's choice, and they had to respect it. On September 3, 2019, Skylar went to trial for the murder of her newborn daughter. During the trial, the state presented preliminary evidence, including a series of text messages that Skylar had sent to her mother. In these messages, she expressed her happiness after giving birth. She also shared that she was very pleased because her belly had returned to its normal size, stating that she would not allow it to return to how it was before. Notably, this message was sent just hours after she gave birth. Skylar texted her mother, "I am really speechless because I am so happy. My belly is back." On the second day of the trial, the prosecution presented new information about Skylar. They stated that Skylar sent several text messages to her mother and boyfriend less than a day after she killed her baby. These messages indicated that Skylar seemed very happy about her baby's death. The prosecution argued that these messages were critical evidence suggesting Skylar's involvement in the baby's death. In one message, Skylar wrote to her mother that she was excited because dinner was coming up and she could wear a cute outfit. She mentioned that her belly had just returned to normal and wanted to take advantage of this time to make things great. However, this text message could be interpreted as an attempt to mask her feelings of guilt, while simultaneously being excited about no longer being pregnant. The state argued that Skylar's use of the word "excited" suggested she was genuinely happy that her baby had died. They also presented evidence of a text message that Skylar sent to her boyfriend in which she stated that although the night before had been the worst, she felt much lighter and happier the next morning. According to the state, this text message implies that Skylar felt unburdened by the death of her baby. The state's position is that Skylar did not want to have the baby. They acknowledged that they could not provide concrete evidence that the baby was born alive. However, they pointed out that Skylar had admitted in her police interview that she heard the baby gurgling and crying. The state alleged that Skylar had searched the internet for information about abortion. It was also alleged that Skylar's mother, Kim, warned her that she would lose everything if she became pregnant. This warning instilled great fear in Skylar, causing her to try to keep her pregnancy a secret. When she could no longer hide her condition, she decided to take drastic measures. On the third day of Skylar's trial, the doctor who performed the autopsy on the baby testified. The autopsy revealed that the baby's cause of death was homicide. However, the doctor could not determine when the fractures in the baby's skull occurred, whether they happened before or after the baby died. In forming his opinion regarding the cause of the fractures, the doctor relied on Skylar's statements during the police interview. Skylar's defense attorney challenged the doctor's testimony, arguing that the doctor may have been biased in confirming the information. According to the attorney, the doctor had already formed an opinion and did not want to change it. During questioning, the doctor admitted that she had never examined the remains of the deceased child under a microscope. The defense attorney then asked the doctor if she had consulted with obstetricians. The doctor answered no. The attorney also asked if the doctor had seen photographs of the burial site or the backyard of Skylar's home. Again, the doctor replied no. Another doctor, specializing in fetal medicine, testified during the afternoon session of Skylar's trial, primarily when questioned by the prosecution. He stated that he suspected Skylar's baby was stillborn and added that she had only performed one screening. Knowing that the margin of error for fundal height measurements during the third trimester of pregnancy is 60%, he believed that Skylar could be carrying a healthy baby. He thought this was possible because Skylar had felt the baby move, and a dead baby would not normally move. He also questioned the report from the doctor who had provided information to the defense. The doctor had stated that Skylar's baby would likely have developmental problems. During cross-examination by the defense attorney, he asked the doctor if the prosecution had paid him. The doctor responded that he was paid $5,000 a day because that was the cost the hospital had to pay for another doctor when they were short-staffed. As the prosecution presented their case against Skylar, more shocking and heartbreaking evidence was introduced in court. The evidence that had the strongest impact on Skylar was the images of the deceased child's remains shown on the television screen. These images left a deep and lasting impression on Skylar, as was evident in her reaction during the trial. When the images of her child's remains appeared on the screen, Skylar initially tried not to look at them. Her remarkably calm demeanor at that moment was a stark contrast to the day before, when she had been visibly shaken for a moment before the judge began the jury selection process. When Skylar's defense attorneys presented their case, they argued that her life had been flawed and challenging even before she was charged with murder. They argued that much prosecution evidence presented a partial truth, with some documents was taken out. Skylar's defense attorney argued that her frequent texting was not evidence that she killed her daughter. Instead, the attorney wanted to highlight Skylar's mental health struggles, particularly an eating disorder that she had been battling since she was 12. This was supported by several pieces of evidence, including Skylar seeing a psychologist and nutritionist regularly for treatment of her eating disorder. To support their case, they presented the jury with photos of Skylar's changing appearance and weight over time. The photos included images of her looking very thin, as well as photos showing her looking slightly heavier. Her attorney stated that Skylar held the baby for hours while she bled on the bathroom floor. Despite her critical condition, Skylar remained committed to providing comfort and care for her baby after suffering unimaginable pain. Skylar's attorneys said she decided to bury the baby in her backyard. They explained to the court that Skylar had originally planned to tell her family about her impending pregnancy, but unfortunately did not have time to do so. Skylar's doctor informed her that she was due in 8 to 10 weeks. Therefore, Skylar thought she had enough time to attend prom and graduate from high school before talking to her mother. During the defense, an obstetrician testified that the baby had died before birth. The doctor argued that since Skylar did not admit to cutting the umbilical cord, it was possible that it had been severed before or during the baby's birth. The doctor also argued that Skylar's description of the baby's appearance was significant because she stated that the baby was white, suggesting that the baby may have died before birth. The obstetrician contended that a healthy newborn baby is not always pink. In fact, in his experience, newborns often have a purplish skin tone. Additionally, the doctor noted that Skylar had only gained 15 pounds during her pregnancy. He suggested that this limited weight gain could be a sign of an eating disorder, which might have restricted the baby's growth in the womb. The doctor's testimony aimed to question the accuracy of what Skylar told the police about the baby's health. Skylar's defense argued that she had only told the police what she wanted to say during questioning. They also claimed that she had not witnessed or participated in any harm to the child. Their goal was to cast doubt on the credibility of Skylar's testimony and suggest that other factors may have contributed to the child's death. Skylar Richardson's trial lasted a week, and the jury then reached its final verdict. The verdict came quickly, after just 4 hours of deliberation. They acquitted Skylar of aggravated murder, involuntary manslaughter, and child endangerment. However, Skylar was convicted of abuse of a corpse, a serious crime punishable by up to a year in prison. Skylar was held in custody until sentencing. During her sentencing hearing, she apologized for her actions and acknowledged the seriousness of the incident. The judge criticized Skylar or her role in the tragic death of her child. The judge was certain that if Skylar had made better decisions during her pregnancy, her child would still be alive. He severely criticized her actions and expressed disappointment that her choices led to serious consequences, including the death of her child. The judge also emphasized that Skylar's decisions were directly responsible for the child's death. The 3-year probation sentence for corpse abuse that the judge imposed on Skylar also served as a warning that her actions were morally unacceptable and against the law. In November 2020, another judge agreed to reduce Skylar's probation to 2 years early at the request of her attorney. During the hearing, Skylar expressed her desire to return to a normal life and asserted that she no longer needed supervision. Recognizing Skylar's progress, the judge decided not to allocate any more probation resources to her case. The judge made it clear that probation is not meant to be a punishment or a form of rehabilitation, but rather to give an individual the opportunity to prove why they should not face prison time. Since her acquittal, Skylar has made the most of this opportunity. She has successfully completed 2 semesters of college and works part-time at the law firm that represented her. Despite her acquittal, Skylar has faced many difficulties in finding a part-time job. She has often been denied job opportunities due to her criminal history. However, that has not stopped her from pursuing her career goals. She has expressed a desire to attend law school and become a defense attorney, hoping to use her knowledge to help others overcome similar hardships.